Chapter 955. Looking for your dimensional bag? It's here. Smiling happily, handsome Sue flapped his wings, and a dimensional bag appeared in front of Sue. Why is my dimensional bag in your hands? Thank goodness no one saw it, otherwise Sue recognized the dimensional bag in front of him and grabbed it. Sue recognized that it was his dimensional bag. Although there was nothing important in it, the usual items and pills were all stored in the dimensional bag, so it was convenient to take them out. For safety reasons, Sue had always kept the important items in the mysterious space. Sue also put the broken sword in the dimensional bag when he ran away last time. With a thought, Sue immediately took out a set of clothes and shoes from the dimensional bag and put them on. I saw your dimensional bag when I came out. It's useless for you to put it on in such a hurry. Anyway, someone has seen it. Handsome Sue interrupted Sue faintly. His voice was a little complicated, and Sue couldn't tell if he was happy, or happy. Saw what? Sue was stunned and looked up at Handsome Sue. She saw you naked. Handsome Sue looked in front of him, as if he was referring to something. Following Handsome Sue's gaze, Sue looked over and saw a young girl not far away. The young girl was about 16 or 17 years old. She still had some childishness on her delicate face, and her beautiful eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Her father and the experts in the sect suddenly left and asked her and the disciples to wait nearby. They said they would be back in a while. She was just walking around casually, wanting to find a place to see what was going on in front of her. She didn't expect to see such a scene. A young man with a bare bottom appeared in this desolate place without a single piece of cloth covering him. Even the sunniest spot could be seen clearly. Appearing completely naked in front of her eyes, was he a savage? The young man didn't look like a savage. Looking from afar, he had a good figure. Ah, what are you looking at? Close your eyes. Just as the young girl's thoughts were in a mess, a loud roar of surprise came from the young man's mouth, as if he had received a special kind of shock. Ah, stinky rogue, you're actually running around naked. Are you an exhibitionist? That cry of surprise interrupted the young girl's train of thought. As if she was attracted by something, she immediately cried out and covered her eyes with her hands. She actually met an exhibitionist in the wilderness. This was purely an accident. At this moment, Sue was truly sullen. Who would have thought that as soon as he came out, he would run into a woman? Moreover, it was an acquaintance. Moreover, he was naked. He immediately covered himself with his robe in a panic. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. This voice is so familiar. When the young girl heard the voice, she felt that it was becoming more and more familiar. Her hands that were covering her eyes loosened a little. She secretly narrowed her eyes and looked at the young man in front of her carefully. Then, she was stunned and even more surprised. She couldn't help but cry out, "Sue, how could it be you?" In a panic, Sue put on his robe and boots. He looked at the young girl in front of him with a helpless expression. Although he hadn't known her for long, she was the daughter of the head of the Xianjian sect, Ji Tianfu. She was Ji Hanua. He was naked, but was actually seen by a woman. Thinking about this, Sue couldn't help but stare at handsome Sue fiercely. Why didn't this guy tell him that there was someone here and a woman at that? Being stared at by Sue, handsome Sue felt wronged. This had nothing to do with him. "Miss Hanua, how could it be you?" After tidying up his clothes, Sue opened his mouth to greet her from afar. His face was a little embarrassed. It was bad enough that he was seen naked, but it was an acquaintance. Suddenly, just before Sue finished speaking, he suddenly squinted his eyes and looked to the side of the void. At the same time, handsome Sue seemed to have sensed something. His small eyes also looked in the same direction as Sue. Whoosh! Soon, 4 figures flew over from afar like flowing light. As soon as they appeared, 4 strong auras filled the air. There were 3 men and 1 woman. They were all middle-aged and had a fierce aura. They stood in the air. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. When he looked at the 4 people, Sue Yi's lips curled into a faint smile. How could Sue not know these 4 people? It was because of these 4 people that he was chased into the space of the 5-clawed golden dragon. When the 4 of them saw Sue in front of them, their faces instantly lit up like flowers under the warm sun. They couldn't help but smile brightly and uncontrollably. Ha ha! It's true that after searching high and low for so long, there's always a glimmer of hope. That person is at the end of the light. Among the four people, a thin, middle-aged man laughed the happiest. He had sworn that if the kid escaped, he would eat **T. He didn't expect that the kid would really escape under their noses. The sect leader came in person and almost killed the four of them. He ordered them to continue searching. If they couldn't find the kid, they would have to bear the consequences. Therefore, they had no choice but to turn back and try their luck. Who knew that sometimes luck really existed? There was always a glimmer of hope. The kid who disappeared into thin air actually appeared again. Besides the thin, middle-aged man, the other three people smiled like flowers as if they were about to be pardoned. For formidable auras instantly locked onto Sue even more carefully, as they were deeply afraid that the kid would suddenly vanish. This time, they absolutely couldn't allow any mishaps to occur. They must capture the kid alive. It's you guys. You chased me for so long. Did you have fun? As he looked at the four people, Sue didn't flee this time. At this moment, Su Yi's soul force estimated the auras of the four Origin Void stage disciples of the Gimdeo sect. One was at the third level of the Origin Void stage, two were at the fourth level of the Origin Void stage, and the middle-aged man in the lead was the strongest with a cultivation at the fifth level of the Origin Void stage. If it was before, Su Yi would surely turn around and flee swiftly. But now, everything was different. Every dog has its day, don't bully the weak. Not to mention Su Little Handsome, who was beside him. Even Su Yi himself was at the peak of the first level of the Origin Void stage. When facing these four people who just broken through to the peak of the first level of the Origin Void stage and obtained the Golden Dragon's blood essence and soul, Su Yi wanted to test himself. Since the Gimdeo sect had already set their sights on him, then he might as well seize this opportunity to deal with as many as he could. Chapter 956. Originally, they had locked their auras in the surroundings, fearing that this kid would turn around and run away in an instant. They knew that although this kid's cultivation was only at the Yuanjin realm, his speed was extremely fast. If they were not at the Yuanjin realm, they would not be able to catch up with this kid in terms of speed. Kid, this time you can escape even if you have wings. Let's see if you can still escape. The skinny senior sneered. He was in a good mood. He had finally found this kid. If he brought him back to the sect master, there would be no need for punishment. It would be a great merit that had been lost and then recovered. J plus SH equals 0-inch escape. Why should I escape? Su Yi smiled slightly. Looking at Su Yi's attitude, the four Golden Saber Protectors could not help but be even more surprised. This kid's attitude today was very different from the last time when he ran for his life. Could it be that an expert from the sect had arrived? Being in the Chaos Zone, the four of them had all been through wind and rain. They had always been cautious and had never been careless. Therefore, they looked at each other and secretly exchanged glances. Suddenly, they began to spy around. However, the four of them did not find any aura of experts in the surroundings at all, except for a strange bird and an unknown girl. The girl seemed to be somewhat familiar. Humph, no matter what, today you can't escape even if you have wings. The skinny senior's face darkened, and a cold light surged in his eyes. To avoid any more trouble, his aura surged, and he pounced on Su Yi. A handprint stretched out and directly grabbed at Su Yi. This time, the skinny senior did not have any carelessness. Last time, it was because of a slight carelessness that this kid had escaped. This time, he had learned his lesson. He was going to capture this kid with his own hands and teach him a good lesson. Only then could he vent the hatred in his heart. Looking at the hand in front of him, Su Yi's smile grew wider and wider. There was some anticipation and passion in his eyes. In a flash, he moved his arm, clenched his 5 fingers, and directly blasted a punch forward, clashing with the handprint. Brat, you are courting death. The middle-aged man sneered when he saw the youth actually advancing instead of retreating. Even though this kid had some extraordinary aspects, but when comparing an Origin True Stage cultivation with a cultivation at the third level of the Origin Void stage, It was simply like striking a rock with an egg. It was even to the extent that he couldn't help but restrain 30% of his strength, as he was deeply afraid of accidentally killing this kid. At that time, he wouldn't be able to give an explanation to the sect leader. That's the protector of the Gimdeo sect. Be careful. Not far away, Ji Hanua's delicate face turned pale. She recognized those 4 people. They were the 4 golden saber protectors of the Gimdeo sect. They were all Origin Void Realm experts and seemed to have great enmity with Su-Yi. Bang! With a low muffled sound, the void rumbled. Under the force of the impact, the surrounding sand and stones flew and the ground cracked. Kacha! PFFF! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the skinny middle-aged man was sent flying. He spat out a large mouthful of blood, and his eyes, which were originally sneering, were filled with fear and shock, as if he had seen a ghost. Then his eyes turned white. Bang! The skinny middle-aged man's body smashed onto the ground. His entire body was stained with blood, and the palm he used to attack with earlier was badly mangled and soft. It was as if all his bones had been shattered into pieces, and he couldn't be any more dead. Even until his death, this skinny middle-aged man wouldn't understand why this youth had actually become so terrifying in a short few days of not seeing him. He'd even retracted some of his strength, as he was deeply afraid of killing this kid. Just thinking about it, he simply couldn't die in peace. Su-Yi waved his hand, and a strand of origin energy shook away the blood the skinny middle-aged man spat out, so as to avoid it staining the clothes he'd just changed into. Su-Yi's figure only trembled slightly when he killed the skinny middle-aged man, and his feet didn't move in the slightest. So weak, his gaze was slightly bewildered, and Su-Yi was slightly puzzled. Could it be that the skinny middle-aged man's cultivation at the 3rd level of the Void Origin stage was fake? It was truly too weak. After that, the corners of Su-Yi's mouth curled up. It wasn't that the skinny middle-aged man was weak, but he was too strong now. A peak 1st level Void Origin stage martial artist, coupled with the tempering of the Guardian Body and Golden Dragon's blood essence. Even if he stood there without moving, a 1st level Void Origin stage martial artist would probably be unable to injure him. Moreover, even though Su-Yi hadn't used his full strength earlier, he similarly didn't hold back. Compared to Su-Yi's astonishment, Ji Hanua and the remaining 3 Golden Saber Guardians were instead flabbergasted, and it was as if they'd seen a ghost. There's something strange about that kid. Attack together, quickly. The middle-aged man in the lead was the first to recover from his shock, and his expression went gloomy as he shouted out loudly before directly pouncing toward Su-Yi. The large saber in his hand emitted a trembling sound as he slashed down toward Su-Yi. Attack together. The remaining 2 people recovered from their shock as their expressions went grim, and they stood on the left and right as well. They tightly grasped the large sabers in their hands, and the saber lights were like bolts of lightning as they descended toward Su-Yi. 3 saber lights were like bolts of lightning, and 3 auras were fierce and fierce. The death of Old Fourth allowed the 3 of them to instantly understand. No wonder this kid didn't flee this time. So it turned out that there was something strange about him, and they didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. You're courting death. The 3 figures pounced out, and the 3 attacks had just moved when a young and tender voice entered into their ears. Bang! A multicolored little figure appeared before Su-Yi, and it instantly transformed into a blazing sea of flames as an unparalleled blazing aura was released. The 3 saber lights were peerlessly fierce and seemed as if they were able to slash open space, and they were extremely powerful. However, they were instantly transformed into nothingness at the place where the flames suffused, and they emitted a sizzling sound as they were directly burned clean. Not good. The middle-aged man in the lead and the other man and woman seemed to have suddenly felt something, and their pupils constricted as their expressions instantly went extremely pale. Bang! 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 The 3 flaming thunderbolts were gorgeous and dazzling, and they directly hit the 3 of them. Uffed! The 3 of them spat out blood at the same time, and before they could regain their senses, their bodies directly fell to the ground. When they crashed to the ground, the flames on their bodies didn't dissipate. In an instant, the three of them were directly burned to ashes, and only a few charred bones were left behind. All of this only happened in the time it took to breathe. The multicolored, blazing flames contracted, and a small bird flapped its wings, and the blazing aura on its body was slowly dissipating. Looking at little handsome Sue in front of him, he felt very helpless. He wanted to properly test himself, but who knew that little handsome Sue would actually kill three of them in one go? However, he couldn't help but feel a little shocked by little handsome Sue's current strength. He didn't know what this little guy had awakened, but it was too abnormal. Gulp. Not far away, someone swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Ji-ha-noa stared at Sue and little handsome Sue, and her delicate face was filled with astonishment, and she couldn't retract her jaw. Ji-ha-noa knew about the 4 protectors of the Gimdeo sect. In this area, there were also well-known existences. Among the protectors of the entire Gimdeo sect, their strength was considered to be at the forefront. Chapter 957. Especially regarding Su Yi's strength, Ji-ha-noa was very clear about it. Not long ago, Su Yi was clearly far from reaching this level of cultivation. Just now, she saw with her own eyes that one of the protectors of the Gimdeo sect was instantly killed by him in one move. This made her doubt if she had seen wrongly. And that little bird, that terrifying aura, made Ji-ha-noa tremble in fear. That blazing aura, just now, was as if it was going to burn her soul in an instant. It was too terrifying. 3 Origin Void Stage powerhouses were actually burned into ashes in an instant. How terrifying was that? Who dares to touch the people of my Gimdeo sect? A loud roar came from the depths of the mountain range. Su-yi, leave quickly. That's the people of the Gimdeo sect. The Gimdeo sect has an Origin Emperor realm expert nearby. Leave quickly. When that voice was heard, it was deafening. It made Ji-ha-noa come back to her senses. Her beautiful face turned pale as she immediately said to Su-yi, "Thank you, Miss Hanu." Su-yi looked at Ji-ha-noa and nodded to express his gratitude. He immediately signaled little handsome Su to leave. He wasn't afraid of facing these Origin Void Realm experts, but the Gimdeo sect had an Origin Emperor Realm expert. Su-yi wasn't confident that he and little handsome Su's current strength could contend against an Origin Emperor Realm expert. Presumably, the people of the Gimdeo sect who had just killed must have used some kind of secret communication method to inform the Gimdeo sect's Origin Emperor Realm expert. Naturally, they would also know that the golden scale blazing sky bow was in his hands. Once it fell into the hands of the Gimdeo sect's Origin Emperor Realm expert, they would definitely not let him go easily. Swoosh! Without any delay, Su-yi pulled little handsome Su and left. They didn't dare to stay for a moment. What's there to be afraid of if it's an Origin Emperor Realm expert? Where's the Green Emperor, Big Brother, and that little dragon? Little handsome Su asked casually as he followed Su-yi. None of them came. Su-yi said, if his big brother, Merciless West, Green Emperor, or Yin-Yang Hell Flood Dragon were here, he wouldn't have to worry about the Gimdeo sect's Origin Emperor Realm expert. Boss, let's retreat first. Hearing that, Su Xiaoshui immediately spun around, and his flapping wings sped up a little. It would be best if he didn't encounter an Origin Emperor cultivator, if possible. So there are times when you're scared. He rolled his eyes at little handsome Su. As little handsome Su sped up, he fell behind in an instant. Vital Qi surged under his feet, and his body soared into the air. He sped up with the Fuyao 100 transformation steps and followed closely behind little handsome Su. The 3rd level of the Fuyao 100 transformation steps allowed one to condense Yuan Qi into a pair of wings to fly. However, at this moment, Su-yi was truly soaring into the sky. Upon reaching the Origin Void Realm, one's Origin Void Qi would transform into the Void, and one would be able to resonate with space. Cultivators of the Origin Void Realm would be able to truly fly in the air. Only then did Su-yi realize that this kind of true flight was much faster than the Fuyao Hunter transformation steps that condensed Yuan Qi into a pair of wings. However, no matter how fast Su-yi was, he still couldn't catch up to little handsome Su. He faintly felt that little handsome Su wasn't going at full speed. Could it be that he was hiding his strength back then? That's not right. Watching Su-yi leave, Ji Hanua's face was filled with doubt. Previously, she clearly saw that although Su-yi's strength wasn't bad, it was far from reaching this stage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been chased by the Sea Dragon gang. However, looking at Su-yi's strength just now, in such a short period of time, no matter how fast he broke through, it was absolutely impossible for him to improve so quickly. Junior Sister Hanua, Senior Sister Hanu. While Ji Hanua was deep in thought, many figures swept out from behind her. There were 20 to 30 people. All of them were young, ranging from 17 to 24-25 years old. The temperament of both men and women were extraordinary. Judging from the aura fluctuations that leaked out from their bodies, this group of young people wasn't old, but their cultivation wasn't weak. They could be considered as the best of the younger generation, especially the black-clothed young man in the lead, who looked to be 21 or 22 years old. He had a slender figure, sword-like eyebrows, and starry eyes. He was very handsome and had an extraordinary temperament. Seeing Ji Hanua in front of him, the black-clothed young man's face was filled with nervousness. He let out a sigh of relief and asked with concern, "Junior Sister Hanua, are you all right?" The sect leader said that we can't run around. There are many Demon Clan experts nearby. Senior brother Yu, I'm fine. I've made everyone worry. Ji Hanua came back to her senses and apologized to everyone. Junior Sister Hanua, what happened to you? You seem to be the protector of the Gimdeo sect? The black-clothed young man's gaze swept around and suddenly changed. He felt that there seemed to be experts fighting here just now. There were corpses on the ground, and upon closer inspection, there was the Gimdeo sect's emblem on the blood-stained robe. Boom! Following the black-clothed young man's words, two mighty auras suddenly descended. The first one was an old man in his 50s, but his hair was white and he looked as if he had aged 10 years in a short period of time. The second one was an old man in his 60s. His eyes were bright, and his figure was neither tall nor big. He wore a fitted long robe, and his black hair was neatly combed into a bun. At this moment, his body was filled with an aura that made people tremble. The old man in his 50s was none other than the sect leader of the Gimdeo sect. He looked around, and when he saw the corpses on the ground and the scattered bones, his gaze turned cold. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with anger, adding to his gloominess. Looking directly at Ji Hanua and the others, Yang Baikuin said gloomily, "So it's the disciples of the Xinjian sect. Did your Xinjian sect do this?" "Greetings, sect leader Yang. We were already like this when we arrived. Does sect leader Yang think that we have the strength to kill the guardians of the Gimdeo sect with our strength?" Ji Hanua naturally knew the sect leader of the Gimdeo sect, Yang Baikuin. At this moment, when he felt the aura and gloomy gaze from Yang Baikuin, he could not help but tremble. Yang Baikuin's gaze swept across the group of Xinjian sect disciples. Naturally, he knew that with the strength of the four golden saber guardians, these few Xinjian sect disciples would not have the strength to kill them. He was killed with a single blow. His internal organs were shattered. His strength is very strong. I'm afraid he is not far from the Origin Emperor realm. The old man in his 60s had already checked the corpse of the skinny middle-aged man. Immediately, he came to Yang Baikuin's side with a gloomy expression. "Since you are here, this matter must have something to do with you. Tell me, who did it?" Yang Baikuin's face was gloomy as he stared coldly at the disciples of the Xinjian sect. The four golden saber guardians said that they found someone with the golden-scaled blazing heavens bow. This matter was highly likely to be related to the murderer of his only son. One could imagine how he felt right now. "Sect leader Yang, my junior sister has already said that with our strength, it is impossible for us to kill the guardians of the Gimdeo sect. We just happen to be here. This matter has nothing to do with us." Chapter 958. Yang Baikuin sneered. The guardians had just been killed, and the disciples of Xinjian sect did not have the strength to do so. However, in such a short period of time, the disciples of Xinjian sect must have seen who did it. Good. Very good. Seems like you guys want to do it the hard way. If you guys don't suffer, you won't talk. Young Baikuin's face was gloomy as the aura around him surged. A wave of aura pressured the disciples of Xinjian sect. This was the oppression of realms. In front of an Origin Emperor realm expert, the disciples of Xinjian sect were no match for him. Instantly, they felt like they were being crushed by a huge force from all directions. The most difficult thing to resist was the oppression of realms. The disciples of Xinjian sect were trembling with cold sweat on their foreheads. The origin chi in their bodies was blocked, and it felt like their acupoints and meridians were about to explode. As the sect leader of Gimdeo sect, how dare you show off in front of a few juniors? Young Baikuin, do you think that I, Ji Tianfu, am not here? Right at this moment, space trembled for no reason, and a low voice suddenly resounded. Boom! At the same time, a powerful aura started to spread across the sky. Surrounding the group of young disciples of Xinjian sect, a mist started to form. Instantly, the pressure on them disappeared. A green light flashed and appeared in front of Jihanua and the young man in black. The person who came was a middle-aged man with a slender figure. Water attribute, Yuan Qi energy rippled around his body. He wore a light blue robe with a light golden belt around his waist. He seemed to have a cultured and refined temperament. But at this moment, the aura on his body was extremely sharp. His entire person was emitting a kind of terrifying aura. The middle-aged man's pitch-black eyes were deep to begin with. He stared at young Baikuin with a sharp glint in his eyes. Without saying anything, he waved his long sleeves and a beam of green light surged in front of him. It shot out like a giant python and blasted towards young Baikuin. Young Baikuin secretly changed his stance. He shook his arm and a golden palm print was shot out. Chilala. As the two forces collided, golden light and green light burst out from the void. A mighty force swept across the area like a hurricane, causing sand and pebbles to fly. Thud, thud, thud. Above the void, young Baikuin was forced to take a few steps back. On the ground, the middle-aged man took a step back as well. His hair danced in the wind. He was the faction leader of Xinjian faction, Ji Tianfu. Ji Tianfu, how dare you attack my sect leader? The old man in his 60s behind young Baikuin had a dark expression on his face as he spoke in a gloomy voice. Wei Dao, who do you think you are? Do you think you have a right to call me by my name? Ji Tianfu did not say anything superfluous. With a sweep of his long sleeve, a surge of water attribute Yuan energy immediately poured out. Like a resplendent green wave, it soared into the sky and swept towards Wei Dao. Wei Dao's expression changed greatly. Although he was an elder of the Gimdeo sect and was much older than Ji Tianfu, he knew that his strength was far inferior to Ji Tianfu's, so he retreated in panic. Ji Tianfu, what is the meaning of this? Young Baikuin stepped forwards. A golden beam of light shot out, blocking Ji Tianfu's attack. His expression turned cold as he glared at Ji Tianfu. His eyes were filled with rage. Young Baikuin, you better give me an explanation for bullying the younger generation of Xinjian faction. Ji Tianfu said in a deep voice. His eyes had already scanned the surroundings, and he was secretly thinking. Father, sect leader, seeing the arrival of Ji Tianfu, Jihanua and the group of young disciples of Xinjian sect heaved a sigh of relief. With the arrival of their sect leader, there was no need for them to be afraid of the sect leader of Gimdeo sect. E first 0 equals Ji Tianfu. For my golden sword sect protectors have been killed. Your Xinjian sect disciple is right here. You should be the one to give me an explanation. If you don't, hand them over to me. If not, don't blame me for being rude. Young Baikuin said in a deep voice. He had to be wary of Ji Tianfu's arrival. In terms of strength, Ji Tianfu was not weaker than him. The entire Gimdeo sect strength was not much stronger than Xinjian faction. Ji Tianfu had already scanned the surroundings. He turned around and looked at Ji Hanua and the group of disciples. He asked, "What is going on?" "Father, it was already like this when we arrived." Then, sect leader Yang arrived. Ji Hanua said her father immediately. There was a hint of evasiveness in her eyes. "Sect leader, it was already like this when we arrived. We don't know who killed the guardians of Gimdeo sect." The young man in black said immediately. Ji Tianfu looked at his daughter and the young man in black. He then raised his head and looked directly at Yang Baikuan. He said, "You heard it. With their strength, I'm afraid they don't have the strength to kill the guardians of Gimdeo sect. If you insist that it was done by my Xinjian sect, then you can assume that. Let's see if my Xinjian sect will be afraid of your Gimdeo sect." Ji Tianfu paused for a moment and looked at Yang Baikuan. He smiled faintly and said, "However, I would like to remind sect leader Yang that the person who killed the guardians of Gimdeo sect should not be far away. If I were you, I would still be able to catch up to them. Otherwise, we won't know who did it." Yang Baikuan's face twitched. He gritted his teeth and looked to the side. He then said to Wei Yidao, who was behind him, "Go after them." Wei Yidao's complexion was very unsightly. He looked very flustered and embarrassed just now. He glared hatefully at Ji Tianfu and immediately followed behind Yang Baikuan. Ji Hanua secretly gritted her teeth as she looked at the direction where Yang Baikuan and Wei Yidao were chasing. Her eyes were solemn. That was the direction where Su Yi and the little bird had escaped. "Are you all okay?" Ji Tianfu asked the disciples behind him. He had noticed Ji Hanua's strange expression without a trace. "Sect leader, we are fine." The disciples replied one by one with lingering fear. The pressure from an Origin Emperor was too terrifying. It was not something they could contend against. "Father, why are you back?" Ji Hanua asked. She was a little surprised. Her father and several elders had gone to the front to search for the strange phenomenon. Why did they suddenly return? This matter is very strange. There is no movement. Several elders are still investigating. Ji Tianfu was also very surprised and puzzled. There was obviously a precious treasure that had appeared in this place. The aura was so powerful and terrifying. However, it suddenly disappeared and no aura could be found. It was as if it had never appeared. Swoosh, swoosh. In the calm sky, a figure swept across the sky. If one looked carefully, one would see that there was a little bird flapping its wings and flying beside the figure. These two people were Su Yi and Su Xiaoshui. "Boss, are we sure we want to run inside?" Su Xiaoshui asked Su Yi. He was wondering why Su Yi suddenly turned and ran inside. Chapter 959. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a primitive forest in front of them. Towering trees covered the mountains. "Let's go in." Su Yi gestured and entered the forest with Su Xiaoshui. In terms of speed, Su Yi had some confidence in his Skyward Hunter transformation steps. However, compared to an Origin Emperor, it wasn't just confidence, it was overconfidence. Su Yi knew that he couldn't be compared to an Origin Emperor's speed. "Hide your aura. The Gimdeo sect's Origin Emperor experts can easily catch up with us," Su Yi said to Su Xiaoshui. Hiding one's aura and entering the primitive forest was much safer than flying in the air. Running deeper into the forest was filled with the aura of many experts of the demon race, which was more advantageous. Perhaps the Origin Emperor of the Golden Saber sect would have some scruples. "That woman seems to know you. It's useless for us to escape. She will know that we killed her. If it's an ordinary Origin Emperor, we might have a chance to kill her if we fight with all our strength." Su Xiaoshui muttered as he retracted his aura and landed on Su Yi's shoulder. If it was an ordinary Origin Emperor, Su Xiaoshui was confident that he could fight head-on without fear. "She shouldn't expose me, right?" Su Yi muttered. He didn't expect Ji Hanua to be here. He had saved her before, so he believed that she wouldn't expose him. Taking a step back, even if Ji Hanua exposed him, it didn't matter. Su Yi wasn't afraid. As long as he could escape this time, even if he had to face the entire Gimdeo sect, the current Bawang sect, he could still contend against them. As for fighting against an Origin Emperor, Although Su Yi was absolutely sure that Su Xiaoshuai's identity as a phoenix cub had skyrocketed to the peak of the 9th level of the demon void realm after the so-called awakening, he wasn't confident that Su Xiaoshuai could contend against an Origin Emperor expert. If it wasn't an ordinary Origin Emperor, the consequences would be huge. On the mountain peak, there were only Ji Tianfu and Ji Han Nua. Ji Tianfu condensed his hand seals and set up a simple seal to isolate the sound. He looked at Ji Han Nua and asked, Han Nua, who killed the 4 protectors of the Gimdeo sect? You should know that person, right? Looks like nothing can escape Father's insight. Jihan Nua's delicate red lips helplessly lifted into a smile. Tell me, the person that you're trying so hard to hide, could it be that he is an elder of Xinjian sect? As the saying goes, no one knows a daughter better than her father. How could Ji Tianfu not know his own daughter? If it was someone else, he might not be able to tell that his daughter was trying so hard to protect someone from Xinjian sect. Within the Xinjian sect, the only ones who could kill the 4 guardians of the Gimdeo sect in such a short period of time were those who were at least elders. This made Ji Tianfu a little suspicious. Although Xinjian sect and Gimdeo sect did not have much of a relationship, and they even competed in the dark, there was no huge grudge between them. The expert from Xinjian sect were all around him, and they were still searching for any strange movements. No one else had taken action just now. Father, do you still remember Su Yi who saved me from the Sea Dragon Triad? Jihan Nua hesitated for a while and did not hide anything from her father. The young man you're talking about? He is young, but he is not bad. Xinjian sect still owes him a favor. Ji Tianfu nodded his head. That young man had left a deep impression on him, and he had praised him before. He was the one who did it. Jihan Nua hesitated for a while and said softly. There was still some uncontrollable shock in her eyes. Was it the experts around him who did it? Ji Tianfu was a little surprised. No, Su Yi did it himself. He killed one of the guardians of the Gimdeo sect with just one move. There was also a strange bird beside him. It should be at the demon void stage. It instantly incinerated 3 guardians of the Gimdeo sect. Jihan Nua said. She still had some lingering fear in her heart. The blazing aura on the strange little multicolored bird was too terrifying. She could feel it from afar, and she felt as though her soul was burning. What? Su Yi killed one of the guardians of the Gimdeo sect with just one move. Ji Tianfu was completely shocked by Su Yi. If it was a demon void stage expert from the demon clan, it would not be strange for him to kill 3 Gimdeo sect guardians who were at the origin void stage in an instant. However, how old was that young man? Jihan Nua clearly felt that he was only at the origin void stage. He killed a Gimdeo sect guardian with just one move. That Gimdeo sect guardian was at least at the 3rd or 4th level of the origin void stage. What kind of strength did that require? Did he really do it himself and kill them with just one move? Ji Tianfu was in complete disbelief as he asked Jihan Nua. Indeed, Jihan Nua knew that her father found it hard to believe. She saw it with her own eyes, and it was similarly hard for her to imagine. If it's true, then it's too unbelievable. Ji Tianfu muttered, and he was unable to calm down in his heart. How old was that young man? He was even slightly younger than Jihan Nua. If he really killed a 3rd or 4th level origin void stage expert with just one move, then it would be too abnormal. Most importantly, when they met last time, that young man had clearly just reached the origin void stage. Perhaps it was because the Gimdeo sect guardian had already been heavily injured, or perhaps it was because of some other reason. In short, Ji Tianfu was unable to calm down in his heart, as he truly felt it was unbelievable. Father, Yang Baikuan is chasing after him. I'm afraid something might happen to him. Father, can you help protect him? Jihan Nua lightly bit her lower lip with her silver teeth as a serious expression appeared in her bright eyes. The direction that Yang Baikuan chased after was precisely the direction that Su Yi left in. Some time ago, it was said that Yang Baikuan's only son, Yang Chuan, was killed. I received news that the Gimdeo sect seemed to have discovered the person who killed Yang Chuan nearby. So the Gimdeo sect's people have been digging 3 feet into the ground to search for him. Yang Baikuin also rushed over here at the first possible moment. If I'm not wrong, the person that the Gimdeo sect is looking for is surely related to Su Yi. Otherwise, merely killing a few Gimdeo sect's guardians wouldn't cause Yang Baikuin to be unable to restrain his anger and offend our Xianjian sect by making things difficult for Yufu juniors. Ji Tianfu pondered as his eyes flickered with light as he said, "Could it be that the person who killed Yang Chuan is Su Yi? At the very least, it's related to him. Father, you must save Su Yi." Jihan Nua's expression changed drastically as she recalled the expressions of those Gimdeo sect's guardians when they saw Su Yi. She reckoned that her father's guess was extremely likely to be true. If Su Yi was related to the killing of Yang Chuan, then Yang Baikuin would definitely not let him go. Chapter 960. Jihan Nua's eyes flashed as she looked at her father. Without much hesitation, she said, "Dad, I'm your only daughter. If it wasn't for him, I would have fallen into the hands of the Sea Dragon Gang. You won't be able to see your daughter now. Our Xianjian sect owes him a favor. So do I." Hearing her daughter's words, Jihan Nua's eyes moved slightly. Then she smiled and said, "Hana, you seem to be overly concerned about Su Yi. You had Q% hair, IH0 hashtag. I'm not. I just owe him a favor." Jihan Nua said immediately. Her voice was a little softer and her cheeks were blushing. In the primitive jungle, huge rocks were everywhere. 2 figures flashed, accompanied by the sound of wind breaking, and instantly appeared at a low altitude. They were Yang Baikuin and Wei Dao. Yang Baikuin appeared and stared at the forest below. Coldness flickered in his eyes as he said, "What a cunning brat. You've been deliberately scattering your aura along the way. Do you think you can escape by doing this? Let's see where you can run to." Whoosh, whoosh, the 2 figures rushed into the primitive jungle. The ancient tree was tall, and its canopy covered the sky. The vines were like dragons entrenched on the giant tree. "Boss, there seems to be a lot of demon aura here." Su Xiaoshui stood on Su Yi's shoulder and looked around with his head held high. He didn't seem to care. There was no demon aura that could scare him. Be careful. Su Yi was very careful. With his soul power, he could sense that there were many demon auras nearby. There were even demon experts. Oh, whoa. There were some barbaric demon beasts around. They stared at Su Yi with glowing eyes and growled. However, when they got closer, they trembled and didn't dare to move. Something's not right. Something's wrong. Suddenly, Su Yi stopped in his tracks. He raised his head and looked at the crisscrossing vines on the towering tree in front of him. A small figure was standing on an ancient vine with a diameter of 0.5 meter. It looked over with a curious gaze. That person was very short, so short that he was as tall as a 3-year-old child. However, this childlike person's face was very mature, and he looked to be in his 50s. His white robes were like jade, and when they covered his body, they were a little too big. His face and his body did not match up at all. When Su Yi looked at the childlike elder, his soul suddenly trembled for no reason. The dwarf elder's eyes seemed to glow with a strange white light at all times. This light was enough to make one's heart palpitate. Just a glance at it would make one's hair stand on end. A demon emperor realm expert. Su Yi's heart skipped a beat. His intuition told him that this midget elder, who looked like a child, was definitely a demon royal realm expert. His strange aura could even affect the heavenly origin demon soul. He was definitely not an ordinary demon royal realm expert. "Boss, it's a demon emperor realm expert." Su Xiaoshui also sensed the elder's aura. His eyes glowed, but he didn't seem to be too concerned. "It's a little human." Looking at Su Yi, the childlike elder spoke. His voice was sharp and piercing, making people uncomfortable. He looked at Su Yi and was surprised by the appearance of a human teenager. The white-clothed dwarf elder wanted to see more about Su Yi. However, the more he looked, the more surprised he was. He didn't know why, but he couldn't see through the teenager's aura. When he heard Su Xiaoshui's words, he looked at Su Xiaoshui. His eyes, which were glowing with a strange white light, were filled with astonishment. For some reason, he sensed an aura from the little bird that made his beast's soul tremble. What's so great about being a Demon Emperor realm expert? Get out of my way. Su Xiaoshui stared at the white-clothed dwarf elder. As a phoenix cub, the blood of the phoenix flowed in his body. He was born to be the king of the demon clan, so he naturally had a sense of majesty and arrogance. Hearing Su Xiaoshui's words and the invisible pressure, the white-clothed dwarf elder was stunned and trembled for no reason. However, the white-clothed dwarf elder's eyes immediately darkened. The little bird was clearly only at the demonic illusionary stage, yet dared to be so arrogant and impudent in front of him. A dark and cold aura instantly spread out from within his body, dispersing the pressure that came from nowhere. He coldly said, "You're quite arrogant. Do you want to die? Let's see who's the one who has a death wish." Su Xiaoshui was also angry. He flapped his wings, and his eyes glowed. The bloodline of the phoenix was not to be challenged. "You can't escape. Let's see where you can run to." As soon as Su Xiaoshui finished speaking, a gloomy and angry voice rang out from behind him. It shook the forest, and ferocious birds flapped their wings, and ferocious beasts roared. Oh no, he caught up so quickly. Su Yi's expression changed. The Origin Emperor realm expert of the Gimdeo sect had caught up so quickly. He had concealed his aura and used all kinds of concealment techniques, but he still couldn't escape from the Origin Emperor realm expert's pursuit. As the gloomy and angry voice rang out, the white-clothed dwarf elder raised his eyes and looked at the sky in front of him. Su Yi's eyes secretly turned. Suddenly, he gritted his teeth and looked at the white-clothed dwarf elder. He said, "Senior Demon Emperor, I am willing to give you a treasure. How about you let us go?" When he heard this, the old dwarf looked at Su Yi with surprise. He laughed coldly, and his voice was ear-piercing like the cry of a crow. He said, "Little human, what precious treasure do you have that can catch my eye? If you really do have it, then I won't mind letting you go." "This is for Senior Demon Emperor. Please let us go," Su Yi said and looked at the white-clothed dwarf elder. Golden light flickered in his hand, and he threw an item to the white-clothed dwarf elder. The white-clothed dwarf elder seemed to be in disbelief. He stretched out his hand, and an invisible force wrapped around the item. He knew that there was nothing strange about it. He held the item in his hand. It was a bow that was emitting an aura and overflowing with light. He was immediately moved and said, "It's a little damaged. It's a mid-grade intermediate Dao artifact. Although it was a little damaged, there was no doubt that it was extremely tempting to a demon emperor. It was indeed a treasure." "Boss, Su Xiaoshui was stunned. He was puzzled when he saw that his boss had taken the initiative to give a mid-grade Dao artifact to the demon emperor. This wasn't his boss's character at all. Su Yi didn't say anything and secretly signaled Su Xiaoshui with his eyes. "Good, not bad. For the sake of this treasure, I will leave you with a whole corpse." The white-clothed dwarf elder looked at Su Yi and Su Xiaoshui and said coldly. Chapter 961. Puny and cunning human. It must be because of you that human experts are chasing after us. Since you can give me a middle-grade doctrine artifact, it means that you have other treasures that are even better than this. The corners of the dwarf elder's mouth curled into a cold smile. How could anything escape his eyes? He didn't expect to obtain something unexpected this time. Killing intent flashed in his eyes as he said coldly to Su, "What's more, this mid-grade Dao weapon still has your soul imprint. It will only truly belong to me after I kill you. Do you think I don't know?" This, Su Yi's eyes were filled with fear. He looked at the old dwarf in white and took a few steps back. Suddenly, he said loudly, "Senior Demon Emperor, do you want to kill me? The golden scorching heavens bow is in your hands now. Let me tell you, the experts of the Gimdeo sect are nearby. You can't hide it from them." Hearing Su Yi's words, the old dwarf in white was surprised. He was puzzled, but he didn't think much of it. He said, "It seems that you are a disciple of the Gimdeo sect. So what if you are from a Gimdeo sect? Do you think I will be afraid of a Gimdeo sect? Then die." As soon as he finished speaking, The aura of the old dwarf in white fluctuated. He was about to attack Su Yi and Su Xiaoshui. At this moment, a faint smile appeared in Su Yi's vigilant eyes. It flashed and disappeared without a trace. Boom! A vast aura descended. Then, two figures landed. A sharp and cold voice thundered. Spirit-devouring Emperor, you better explain to me why the golden, scorching heavens bow is in your hands. The two figures landed. They were the sect master of the Gimdeo sect, Yang Baikuan, and Elder Wei Dao. When he saw the eye-catching golden scale, blazing heavens bow in the hands of the dwarf in white, Yang Baikuan's eyes were about to burst into flames. So, it's you, Yang Baikuan. The white-clothed dwarf elder was also a little surprised. He looked at Yang Baikuan and Wei Dao, who were both Origin Emperors. His eyes turned cold. He raised the golden scale, blazing sky bow in his hand and sneered. Now that this bow is in my hands, it is mine. Do I need to explain to you? Don't forget, this is the territory of the demon race. It is not a place for you humans to be rampant. Yang Baikuan, it's the sect master of the Gimdeo sect. Hearing the white-clothed dwarf old man's words, Su Yi's gaze trembled. He never expected the person to be the sect master of the Golden Saber sect, Yang Baikuan. According to Huang Jian, Yang Baikuan was already at the 5th level of the Origin Emperor realm. The old man beside him was obviously an Origin Emperor expert. Su Yi was at a loss. When he saw Yang Baikuan and the old dwarf in white, he seemed to understand what Su Yi was doing. He immediately landed on Su Yi's shoulder and retracted his aura completely. His eyes were filled with hidden laughter. When the devouring spirit emperor finished his words, Yang Baikuan couldn't suppress the coldness in his eyes anymore. He said coldly, "So, the people of the Gimdeo sect were also killed by you?" Although the devouring spirit emperor was a little surprised, he wasn't afraid of Yang Baikuan. He looked straight at Yang Baikuan, and the coldness in his eyes became even colder. He glanced at Su Yi in the distance and said, "So what if I want to kill the people of the Gimdeo sect? Can you, Yang Baikuan, stop me? Even if it's that brat, I'll still kill him today." Su Yi didn't expect Yang Baikuan to come personally, and even bring along an Origin Emperor expert. Looking at the atmosphere, his eyes darkened and he gritted his teeth. Suddenly, he ran towards Yang Baikuan with a terrified expression. He shouted at Yang Baikuan, "Sect Master Yang, save me. This demon emperor wants to silence me. Save me." This demon emperor is holding the golden scale, blazing sky bow. He's like a 3-inch long, like an immature radish. He's a little dwarf, but he doesn't put the Gimdeo sect in his eyes, and even said that he wants to kill the people of the Gimdeo sect. "Brat, you're courting death." The spirit-devouring emperor was already in a bad mood. He had never had a good temper, and he hated being called a midget radish the most. A chill shot out of his body, and he leaped into the air. He turned into a strange white light and pounced towards Su Yi. "Devouring Spirit Emperor, you killed the disciples of the Gimdeo sect and my son. I, Yang Baikuan, will not let you off." Yang Baikuan was furious. His Origin Emperor aura burst out and a golden palm print shot towards the devouring Spirit Emperor, blocking in front of Su Yi. "Yang Baikuan, I'm not afraid of you. This is the territory of the demon race. It's not your place to be arrogant." The devouring Spirit Emperor wasn't someone who could be provoked easily. Not many people dared to provoke him like this. His white robe fluttered in the wind as he clenched his small fist. An icy waterfall collided with his fist. When the two collided, the icy waterfall seemed to be able to freeze everything. It actually froze Yang Baikuan's golden palm print, causing it to crack and shatter. Thump! Thump! The remaining impact caused the two figures to take a few steps back in the void. Many ancient vines around them were frozen and covered in ice. The branches of the trees were broken and fell with a rumble. "Devouring Spirit Emperor, I will not let you off today." Yang Baikuan was furious. He didn't have any advantage in the attack just now. The golden, blazing sky bow was in the hands of the Devouring Spirit Emperor. Needless to say, the Devouring Spirit Emperor had killed his only son and taken the golden, blazing sky bow. Only the devouring spirit emperor could kill Huang Jian so easily. Taking everything into consideration, Yang Baikuan had already determined that the devouring spirit emperor was the murderer of his son. Buzz! A golden saber appeared in Yang Baikuan's hand. The golden saber shone brightly as the energy of heaven and earth gathered around it. It made a clanging sound, and a sharp pressure swept out. It was an extraordinary treasure, perhaps even more powerful than the golden blazing sky bow. Devouring Spirit Emperor Dai. The hatred of his son's death was irreconcilable. With a golden saber in hand, Yang Baikuan suddenly exploded. Boom! The saber light was like lightning, stirring up the wind and clouds as if it was going to shatter the void. Yang Baikuan attacked furiously with undisguised killing intent. Rays of saber light suddenly shrouded the devouring Spirit Emperor. Yang Baikuan, do you really think I'm afraid of you? Sensing Yang Baikuan's murderous aura, the devouring Spirit Emperor was enraged. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as well. A bright light shot up into the sky from his body, and his body seemed to expand. A terrifying icy aura suddenly burst out and turned into a white worm about 5 feet long. The long worm was like a centipede, its entire body emitting a kind of icy cold color. Its entire body was suffused with a faint blood-red light, giving it a somewhat frightening feeling. It had no legs, but it had thin cicada-like wings, and its head was like a large bee. Chapter 962. There was a strange aura fluctuation in this icy aura that made people's souls extremely uncomfortable and tremble for no reason. Spirit-devouring Emperor Dai. A vast aura surged again as Wei Yidao's vital qi burst out. He took the opportunity to attack without holding back his LV-3 Origin Emperor Realm aura. With a 5-foot-long machete in his hand, he and Yang Baikuan attacked Spirit-devouring Emperor from both sides. Woo-woo! Despicable human! Spirit-devouring Emperor let out an ear-piercing shriek that seemed to be able to pierce the soul. The icy aura kept surging and engulfing a large area of the void. The towering trees and ancient vines below seemed to have turned into ice sculptures. The icy aura was enough to freeze creatures with low cultivation into ice in an instant. LV-4 Demon Emperor Realm. Ice Marrow Spirit Devouring Bug. He could not help but be surprised when he saw the true body of Spirit-devouring Emperor. The Ice Marrow Spirit Devouring Bug was definitely a terrifying expert of the Demon Clan. It was rumored that the Ice Marrow Spirit Devouring Bug was enough to make people of the same level shudder and retreat. That was because its icy aura was strange and could specifically target the soul. The Ice Marrow Spirit Devouring Bug had a strange, icy poison. Once infected, it would penetrate into the body and freeze the bone marrow. It would follow the body like a shadow and then freeze the whole body. In the end, the most terrifying thing was to have one's soul devoured by the Ice Marrow Spirit Devouring Bug. Generally, even those whose cultivation was one level higher than the Ice Marrow Spirit Devouring Bug would not want to provoke it. It was imaginable how furious Yang Baikuan was at this moment. At this moment, Wei Yidao was the most helpless one. He was absolutely afraid of Spirit-devouring Emperor. However, it seemed that the sect master was not able to completely suppress Spirit-devouring Emperor. Wei Yidao had to help, so he had to be careful for fear of falling in his Spirit-devouring Emperor's trap. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 Emperor Realm experts fought with all their strength in an instant. Suddenly, there were continuous muffled sounds as if the mountains were collapsing. Rumble. Various auras converged into a terrible energy storm and spread out, moving mountains and seas. The shockwaves from the collision smashed the towering trees into smithereens, and cracks appeared on the ground. Let's go. He raised his eyes to look at the turbulent battlefield above the void. He gritted his teeth fiercely and immediately leaped away secretly. Boss, your Tao artifact is still in the hands of the devouring Spirit Emperor. What should we do? Handsome Su asked. We'll figure out a way later. The spirit-devouring emperor won't suffer much. If we don't leave now, it'll be too late. If he didn't leave now, when would he? He didn't waste any time. He retracted his aura and immediately fled. He reckoned that Yang Baikuan and the origin emperor of the Gimdeo sect had to pay full attention to the Ice Marrow spirit-devouring bug, which was at the level of the spirit-devouring emperor. It was a good time for him to escape. Yang Baikuan was at the 5th level of the origin emperor realm. In addition, the expert from the Gimdeo sect seemed to be at the 3rd level of the origin emperor realm. However, He knew very well that even if the two of them joined forces, they would at most be able to suppress the spirit-devouring emperor and make him suffer some losses. Moreover, this was the territory of the demon clan. Such a commotion would soon attract other experts of the demon clan. Even if the spirit-devouring emperor didn't have any friends, the demon clan had always been united against humans. At that time, Yang Baikuan would be the one at a disadvantage. Once Yang Baikuan realized that something was wrong, it would be too late for him to leave. He didn't dare to stop and quickly fled. It was better to leave this place as soon as possible. As for the golden scale, blazing sky bow, he naturally didn't intend to give it to the spirit-devouring emperor for free. The spirit-devouring emperor should be a demon emperor nearby. He would think of a way to get it back later. Although the spirit-devouring emperor was not to be trifled with, He reckoned that it wouldn't be a big problem given the current strength of the Green Emperor and the Yin-Yang Ghost Emperor. A huge commotion shook the mountain range. Savage beasts roared, and ferocious birds flapped their wings, majestic and mighty. An obscure and powerful aura permeated and spied on this place. Swoosh! In the distant void, a figure appeared from afar. It was Ji Tianfu. Didn't Yang Baikuan go after Sui? Why is he fighting with the spirit-devouring emperor? Ji Tianfu was a little puzzled as he looked at the figures fighting in the void in the distance. How dare a human fight in the territory of the demon clan? He's getting bolder. Suddenly, a purple light flashed in the distant void. A low voice sounded, and a figure swept over like lightning. Shameless human, do you really think we're easy to bully? A voice roared, and a black light covered the sky. The aura was vast and mighty. The faint voice was calm, like an ancient well. When the last word was spoken, an old figure had already appeared in the void. Demonic chi filled the air. Swoosh, swoosh. Soon, many figures flew over and appeared in the void to watch from afar. Sui, who was fleeing in a hurry, didn't know that his last-minute plan had caused a great disturbance to the big forces and demon emperors nearby. He didn't dare to stay any longer and fled in a hurry. Yang Baikuan came in person, and there were other origin emperors around him. He reckoned that unless the Green Emperor and the Yin-Yang Ghost Emperor were by his side, he'd better not encounter them. Even if Huang Jian had broken through to the origin emperor realm in the mysterious space, it was still far from enough. Besides the Gimdeo sect, he seemed to have provoked the spirit-devouring emperor. This was the territory of the demon clan, so he'd better leave as soon as possible. In the mountain range, there were groups of beasts and ferocious birds roaming in the void from time to time. This didn't affect Sui and Su Xiaoshui. They released their aura slightly, which was enough to make the beast souls of the savage beasts tremble and stay away. After a few hours, the shocking battle between the Emperor Realm experts behind him had disappeared. He still didn't dare to be careless. Once Yang Baikuan came to his senses, he would come to find him immediately. However, He reckoned that Yang Baikuan wouldn't come to his senses so quickly. The golden scale, blazing sky, Bao, was with the spirit-devouring emperor. No matter what, Yang Baikuan wouldn't give up, and the spirit-devouring emperor wasn't someone to be trifled with. Thinking of the success of his last-minute plan, he couldn't help but admire his own intelligence. He didn't panic in the face of danger. He was brave and resourceful. Boss, we seem to have gone in the wrong direction. Just as He was praising himself in his heart, Su Xiaoshui interrupted Su Yi's thoughts. How could we have gone in the wrong direction? He frowned and stopped, squinting his eyes. Su Xiaoshui flapped his wings and hovered in front of Su Yi. He looked ahead faintly and said, "I think we've gone in the wrong direction." The sky gradually turned dark. The view ahead was vast and hazy. The outline of an ancient city in the distance stretched across the horizon. Even the sound of the road ahead could be heard from afar. There were some figures and traces of horses and carriages. Seems like we've gone in the wrong direction. Chapter 963. It seems quite lively. Su Xiaoshui looked from afar and blinked his small eyes. He could feel many auras. He squinted his eyes. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Let's go take a look." After coming to the Chaos region, he had yet to see the prosperity of the Chaos region. He could feel that the outline of the city in front of him was not small. It must be rather prosperous and crowded. Even if the people of the Golden Saber sect caught up to him, it would be more advantageous for him to escape. He hid in a corner and landed on ground. He then walked towards the big city. He did not want to attract attention. He also stuffed Su Xiaoshui into his arms. Su Xiaoshui could only poke his head out of Su Yi's arms. He looked helpless. On the road outside the city, the sun was setting. There were more and more people. They were in groups of 3 to 5. Sometimes they were in groups of 7 to 8. Some of them were in ragged clothes and looked miserable. Some seemed to be injured. Some were chatting and laughing. However, all of them had the same bloody aura. What's going on recently? Why are there so many savage beasts rioting? It's not just that. I heard that the experts of the Gimdeo sect, Xinjian sect, Green Sanctuary sect, Liu sect, and 7-Star Sword School have all gone to the mountains. Aren't the Gimdeo sect, Xinjian sect, Green Sanctuary sect, Liu sect, and 7-Star Sword School training their younger disciples because of the alliance meeting? They are indeed training their younger disciples. However, I heard that a treasure has appeared in the mountains recently. That's why the savage beasts are rioting. Those experts have also gone there. Is there really a treasure that has appeared? Don't even think about it. It's not something we can get close to. The Devouring Spirit Emperor, Purple Elephant Emperor, Dragon Rhinoceros Emperor, and Black Tortoise Emperor are all there. I heard that even the experts of the Gimdeo sect, Xinjian sect, and Green Sanctuary sect can't get close. Listening to the discussions, He remained expressionless. His eyes twitched as he heard some familiar names, such as the experts from Xinjian sect, Gimdeo sect, and the Devouring Spirit Sovereign. What precious treasure! That was left behind by the dragon race. Boss, you've long since obtained it. These fellows can't find it at all. Little handsome, Su poked his head out of Su Yi's clothes and was very proud. He was the one who had found the good stuff for Su Yi. Don't talk. The walls have ears. Su Yi flicked little handsome Su's head. If people found out that he had obtained the blood essence and soul of the 5-clawed golden dragon, the whole world would hunt him down and make him bleed. Boss, it hurts. Little handsome Su stretched out his wings and scratched his head helplessly. Don't talk. We're still being hunted down. Su Yi mercilessly stuffed handsome Su back into his arms. If someone recognized handsome Su's identity, he would be in big trouble. It was better to be careful. Rumble, get out of the way, get out of the way, get out of the way. Suddenly, the ground behind Su Yi began to tremble, as if the earth was quaking and the mountains were swaying. Many loud shouts came from behind Su Yi. Roar! The deafening roar of beasts could be heard. Many huge beasts charged at them at an extremely fast speed. Bang, bang, bang. Some people couldn't dodge in time and were sent flying by the strong wind brought about by the huge beasts. Some of them only staggered back in a sorry state. Some of them were seriously injured and were sent flying. He moved his feet and glided to the side. Although it seemed dangerous and hurried, he had just avoided the group of beasts. The beasts brushed past him, and the strong wind brought about by them made Su Yi's clothes flutter. However, Su Yi's body was unharmed, and he didn't move at all. Looking up, Su Yi saw more than 10 barbaric beasts that were as large as elephants. They looked like wolves and horses, and their bodies were robust. Their roars were like the howls of wolves, and their bodies were covered in a thick layer of meat armor. This was a type of wolf horse. It wasn't a low-level beast, and was usually tamed to become a mount. This kind of barbaric beast mount was extremely powerful and fast. Among the barbaric beasts of the same level, there were few who could match its speed. However, it was easy to tame and was one of the best barbaric beast mounts. However, it wasn't something that an ordinary person or force could possess. At this moment, there were 2 or 3 young men sitting on top of each of the barbaric beasts. Each of them had a 3-feet-long sword on their back, and they had an extraordinary aura. All of them were sitting high up on their barbaric beasts as they looked at the flustered figures around them. There was a sense of arrogance in their eyes, and their eyes were filled with disdain. Russell, behind some of the beasts, there were 11 people whose hands were tied by vines or ropes. They were dragged behind the beasts. Their bodies were badly mutilated from the friction. Their hair was disheveled, and they were bleeding profusely. It was a horrible sight. "Brat, do you want to die?" A loud shout came from behind Su-E. A ferocious aura came from behind him. Su-E, who was in a daze, suddenly came back to his senses. His body immediately moved aside, and a barbaric beast whizzed past his shoulder less than a foot away. Roar! A deafening tiger roar was heard. A strong gale swept across, and the surrounding rocks were blown away. Su-E seemed to be in danger, but he didn't move at all. It was a ferocious tiger covered in red light. It was smaller than the wolf horse, but its aura was incomparably ferocious. On the back of the ferocious tiger sat a young man. He was wearing red clothes and had black hair. He also had a sword on his back. He turned around and stared at Su-E. He had a handsome face and looked to be around 24 or 25 years old. He had an arrogant look on his face, and his eyes were cold. He said, "Brat, you are lucky this time. If you dare to block my way next time, you will become minced meat under my mount's hooves." After he sneered, the arrogant young man ignored Su-E. The ferocious tiger roared and leaped dozens of feet. Soon, it arrived in front of the wolf horse. Swish! On the back of the ferocious tiger, there was also a young man. His hands were tied, and his body was dragged on the ground. Sometimes, the tiger leaped down, and his body was violently pulled up. His body was drenched in blood, and his hair was disheveled. His clothes were tattered and stained with blood. Vaguely, one could see that his body was thin. Behind Xiong, who was a slender figure, his hair was disheveled, and his face was yellowish. At this moment, his face was stained with blood. His eyes were half squinted as his gaze fell on Su-E. He could not help but size him up a little more. Then, his determination and hatred returned as he gritted his teeth and endured everything. "Reckless fool, how dare you be so arrogant?" In Su-Yi's arms, Su Xiaoshui couldn't stand it anymore. There was actually someone who was so arrogant. He wanted to rush out and settle the score with the young man. Forget it. It's better to avoid trouble. Chapter 9:64. But Su-Yi was slightly curious towards that group of young disciples, especially that ferocious tiger. It was a sky-shattering tiger at the 3rd level of the Demon Void stage, and a young man that was able to possess such a mount probably had an extraordinary identity. Roar! A wave of commotion arose as dust and sand flew up into the air, and the group of barbaric demon beast mounts left in a mighty array. They were overbearing and arrogant, and they didn't take anyone seriously. It's the members of the 7-Star Sword School. It's the younger generation of the 7-Star Sword School, and they ought to have tempered themselves in the mountains. They're really arrogant. Too arrogant. Oomph. The 7-Star Sword School is really arrogant. So what if they're arrogant? That's the 7-Star Sword School, and the younger generation are the top figures of the 7-Star Sword School. Their statuses are extraordinary, and they're highly valued in the 7-Star Sword School. Not only that, that sky-shattering tiger from before is at the Demon Void stage, and it's said to be the mount of the 7-Star Sword School's sect master, Ran Jianxian. If it wasn't Ran Jianxian who sat on it earlier, then it could only be his son, Ran Yin, the young sect master of the 7-Star Sword School. No wonder that barbaric demon beast is so terrifying. It's actually at the Demon Void stage. The surrounding people discussed with complicated gazes, and they didn't dare obstruct the group of juniors in the slightest as they left. Who are those people that were tied up behind? They're too pitiful. I wonder who offended the 7-star sword school. Could it be that there's some deep enmity between them? Someone asked. Since they were dragged away like this, it seemed like the 7-star sword school had some deep enmity with these people. Lower your voice. There's a barbaric demon beast at the demon void stage there. Be careful of being heard. A companion lowered his voice and discussed in a low voice. Those are members of the Azure Moon mercenary group. I heard that for some unknown reason, the Azure Moon mercenary group seemed to have offended the 7-star sword school and was completely annihilated by the experts of the 7-star sword school. The remaining people seem to be the remaining experts of the Azure Moon mercenary group. They're probably staying behind to deter the other powers. Azure Moon mercenary group, their strength isn't low. This Azure Moon mercenary group seems to have a pretty good reputation. How did they offend the 7-star sword school? Who knows? No matter how soft the sound was, it couldn't escape Su Yi's ears. However, this had nothing to do with him, and he didn't want to meddle in other people's business. Surrounded by huge cities, the area was larger than Su Yi had imagined. The majestic city walls meandered like a coiled dragon. The thick city walls were dozens of feet high, and the city gates were wide open, large enough to allow huge beasts to enter. On the huge rock above, the words Sword Star City were carved. Outside the city gates, there seemed to be a blockade. When Su Yi arrived, many people had already gathered. A gigantic tiger was entrenched in the air. Its aura was ferocious, and its eyes were emitting a terrifying bloody light. Anyone who raised their eyes to look at it could not help but tremble. More than 10 wolf-horse barbarian demonic beasts stood neatly outside the city gate. Each and every one of the young disciples of the 7-star sword school had confident and sharp gazes. A total of 12 people were hung on the city walls on both sides of the city gate. Their bodies were dripping with blood, and their blood flowed down the city walls, adding to their miserable appearance. These dozen or so people originally had disheveled hair, but it seemed that someone had deliberately tied their hair behind their heads, revealing their blood-covered faces. They were all in their 30s and 40s, and their auras seemed to have been completely sealed. They were all heavily injured, and some of them even had their tendons severed. It was a terrible sight to behold. The slender figure that was originally being dragged behind the Ayuka heaven-splitting tiger was now hanging in the most conspicuous position at the side of the city gate. Her messy hair was also pushed to the back, but it was actually a woman's face. This woman was around 30 years old. The skin on her face was slightly yellow, and there was a dark red birthmark on half of her forehead. Otherwise, with her exquisite facial features, it would definitely be a beautiful face. The woman's face was stained with blood. Her dark gray clothes were wrapped around her graceful figure, but at this moment, her clothes were tattered. Her thighs, waist, and even some parts of her body were exposed, especially some parts that were on the verge of popping out. Accompanied by the bloodstains, it added a kind of sad beauty, giving people an extremely special visual impact. People from the Azure Moon mercenary group. It's Nangong Ningyue from the Azure Moon mercenary group. Some people whispered as their expressions changed drastically. Quite a few people's gazes were burning as they sized up her curvaceous figure. In particular, the exposed part of her body caused them to feel a burning sensation in their hearts. However, when they saw the large dark red birthmark on Nangong Ningyue's forehead, it made people feel a little regretful. The people present were not ordinary people. Every single one of them lived a life where blood dripped from the tip of a blade. They had experienced hundreds of battles, and it was the same for women. They all knew that if it wasn't for this large birthmark, a woman like Nangong Ningyue, that taste, his KTSK. Everyone listen up. Offending the 7-star sword school. This is the outcome of the Azure Moon mercenary group. On top of the Ayuka heaven-splitting tiger, the voice of the arrogant young man, mixed with vitality, resounded throughout the city gate. 8th level of Yuan Jun realm. Looking at the young man, Su Yi was truly surprised. His age seemed to be about the same as that young Master Wong of the Green Sanctuary sect, But his cultivation was even stronger, and his talent was not ordinary. As soon as the young man finished speaking, he stood on top of the Ayuka heaven-splitting tiger, and his gaze fell on Nangong Ningyue, who was on the city wall. His gaze burned with passion towards her exquisite figure and the spring color that was exposed, but it was even more regretful. It was a pity that the birthmark on her face could not be looked directly at, otherwise he could have played with it. Roar! The Ayuka heaven-splitting tiger roared and carried the young man into the city. The group of 7-star sword school disciples outside the city gate also followed behind and entered the city. Following the departure of the disciples of the 7-star sword school, the surrounding onlookers heaved a sigh of relief. Whoosh whoosh. Outside the city gate, some people heard the roars outside the city, and immediately many figures rushed out to watch the show. For a time, figures flickered outside the city gate, and it was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. One by one, gazes fell on Nangong Ningyue and the others who were hanging on the city wall. Their expressions all changed as they discussed spiritedly. On the city wall, the dozen or so people of the Azure Moon mercenary group, who were being sized up and discussed by many people, seemed to even have their voices restricted. They were unable to speak, but their gazes were upright and unyielding. Su-Yi was squeezed into the crowd, and a faint aura surged, shaking away the people around him without leaving a trace. His figure shuttled through the crowd and immediately arrived at the city gate. Suddenly, a gaze seemed to fall on him, sizing him up. This gaze was a bit special and was caught by Su-Yi's sharp soul force. Immediately, Su-Yi raised his eyes and followed the gaze. Chapter 965. Su-Yi didn't need to inquire about Nangong Ningyue and the Azure Moon mercenary group. From the discussions around him, he had already heard a lot and had a rough understanding of them. The Blue Moon mercenary group had quite a bit of fame in the vicinity. They had quite a few experts, and there were several hundred of them. Such a force had a certain status in the entire Chaos region. In a place like the Chaos region, the strong were respected, and it was extremely chaotic. Especially a force like a mercenary group, it was even more complicated. Ordinary forces weren't willing to provoke a mercenary group. However, the Azure Moon mercenary group's reputation in the nearby area was quite good. The group leader, Nangong Ningyue, was even more famous. She wasn't old, but in a few short years, she had made the Azure Moon mercenary group famous in the nearby area. Nangong Ningyue was a woman, and a young woman at that, but among a group of fierce men who were like wolves and tigers, her prestige was extremely high. She kept her word, and it was rumored that those who had dealt with her were extremely appreciative and admiring. However, for some unknown reason, the Azure Moon mercenary group seemed to have offended the 7-star sword school and was massacred by the 7-star sword school. The remaining experts of the mercenary group were also hung in the Sword Star City for public display. Su-Yi sized up Nangong Ningyue. Their eyes met and looked straight at each other. Such a woman wasn't old, but she was able to make a name for herself in the Chaos Moon region. She should have some extraordinary methods. However, she had fallen into such a situation. Strength was respected. The 7-star sword school didn't seem to be weak. In front of them, the Azure Moon mercenary group didn't have any power to resist. Su-Yi lamented in his heart. He was already used to it and didn't want to cause any more trouble. He quietly entered the city in the crowd. Nangong Ningyue's gaze fell on Su-Yi. Blood had formed scabs in her half-closed eyes. She tried her best to open her eyes a little. Nangong Ningyue's tenacious but calm eyes had some fluctuations. She kept looking at Su-Yi's back until it disappeared under the city gate. Only then did she return to calmness. In the Sword Star City, the sky was gradually turning dark, but it seemed to be even more lively. On both sides of the wide street, there were all kinds of shops neatly arranged. Clothing, food, shelter, and transportation were all available. It was completely different from the outside. Outside the city, there was mutual deception, and it was incomparably dangerous. Barbaric demonic beasts roamed freely. The city, on the other hand, was bustling with life. This Sword Star City was even more prosperous than Su-Yi had imagined. In Suyi's imagination, although a place like the Chaos region was vast, it would not be that prosperous. However, at this moment, the prosperity of the Sword Star City had completely broken Su Yi's imagination. Although the degree of prosperity was not as great as the Central Continent city, it was not inferior to other cities of the same level in the Central Continent. It was even more prosperous, and there was an additional ferocious atmosphere. In the Central Plains, fighting was not allowed in any city. However, in this Sword Star City, he had already seen a couple of disputes while he was strolling around. There were also some people who had come to blows. However, both parties were restraining themselves. Otherwise, it was likely that the streets would have been destroyed. However, there seemed to be a price to pay for these private fights. Someone appeared, and regardless of who won or lost, they charged a fee in the name of destroying the city. The fee didn't seem to be low. Those who were charged all had ugly expressions on their faces. They felt extremely pained, but they didn't dare to refuse. It's so lively. Su Xiaoshui poked his head out from Su Yi's embrace and looked around. If it wasn't for Su Yi holding him down, he would have flown out long ago. Boss, this is too depressing. Su Xiaoshui was very dejected. He pouted his little mouth and his eyes rolled around. You must not expose your true form. Otherwise, the two of us will really be in big trouble. He had to remind Su Xiaoshui. Then, he said, when you reach the Demon Monarch stage, you'll be able to transform into a human form. At that time, you won't have to do this. No, Demon Monarch stage. When you broke through to the Demon Void stage, you didn't seem to have gone through the tribulation. Any living being from the Demon Clan would have to go through the tribulation when they broke through to the Demon Void stage. Only then did Su Yi remember that the Blood Jasper Spirit Ginseng had gone through the tribulation. However, Su Xiaoshui was currently at the peak of the 9th level Demon Void stage, but he had never seen this fellow go through the tribulation. When Su Xiaoshui heard this, he raised his little head and glanced at Su Yi proudly. He said, usually, only the Demon Clan has to go through the tribulation. I have the body of a phoenix. Unless I reach an extremely high level, I don't have to go through the tribulation at all. Su Yi was stunned and continued to ask, so, if you step into the Demon Monarch stage, you don't have to go through the tribulation? Of course, Su Xiaoshui said proudly. Su Yi was speechless. Compared to this fellow, Su Xiaoshui was like a favored child of the heavens. How long had it been since he broke out of his shell? Usually, he didn't cultivate much, but he was already at the peak of the 9th level Demon Void stage. He could even ignore the tribulation that the Demon Clan had to go through. Sigh, I'm not even as good as a bird, Su Yi sighed. As the saying went, comparisons were odious. If one were to compare oneself to a bird, it would be even more infuriating. Young man, I can tell with one look that you're not ordinary. You must be a dragon among men. Suddenly, in the bustling street, an old man in his 50s ran to Su Yi's side with a swoosh. His face was full of admiration. What's the matter? Su Yi took a step back discreetly and became vigilant. Young man, you have a unique physique. I've seen countless people, but to be honest, I've never seen someone as talented as you. It's just that you've... The old man had a shrewd face and a small figure. His small eyes were especially bright. He lowered his voice and said mysteriously to Su Yi, to be honest, I accidentally obtained a cultivation method. Unfortunately, I'm too old to cultivate it. However, this cultivation method is extraordinary and rare in the world. I guarantee that after you cultivate it, you'll be able to step into the Yuan Jun stage in 10 years, the Yuan Void stage in 30 years, and even the Yuan Monarch stage in 30 years. Goodbye. Hearing this, Su Yi already knew what was going on. He didn't expect there to be a swindler in a place like the Chaos region. He couldn't be bothered and left immediately. Young man, slow down. I haven't even said the price yet. The price can be negotiated. Looking at Su Yi's back, the old man's voice became softer and softer. He then muttered to himself, people nowadays are becoming more and more shrewd. It's not easy to swindle them. The sky was getting darker and darker. It was already nighttime. The city was already brightly lit with lanterns. It was as if it was daytime. The shops on both sides of the street were still bustling with activity. It wasn't easy to enter the city. Sui also bought a lot of things. Sui bought more than 10 sets of clothes in one go. Unexpectedly, he saw a blacksmith shop. Sui also bought a few big iron pots so that it would be convenient for him to stew meat in the future. Then he found a well-hidden grocery store and bought a lot of oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar. Seeing Sui buy oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar, the store owner couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Usually, the people who came to buy oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar were some ordinary women. In this huge Sword Star city, there were also many ordinary people living in it. They maintained the operation of this huge city. Chapter 966. After settling everything, Sui had a smile on his face. But the one who was even happier was little handsome Sui. He stuck his head out and asked Sui, "Boss, can we go barbecue now?" Thinking about the smell of barbecue, little handsome Sui almost drooled. What barbecue? Cultivate well and break through to the Demon Emperor realm as soon as possible. Sui flicked little handsome Sui's head. He didn't expect that in the Chaos region, he would still be hunted down. It was because his cultivation wasn't strong enough. I'm already close to the Demon Emperor realm. Clearly, you're still far from the Origin Emperor realm. Little handsome Sui muttered and rolled his eyes at Sui. What did you say? Sui asked. Nothing. I mean, where are we going now? Little handsome Sui wasn't stupid and didn't dare to say it again. Let's go sell some things and see if there's anything we want to buy. Sui wanted to find a trading company to take a look. There were many spiritual herbs and treasures in the mysterious space. He wanted to find a trading company to sell them. Thinking about how he still owed the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion an astronomical number of vitality stones, Sui felt a little uncomfortable. For a wooden box that couldn't be opened, Sui couldn't help but feel a little heartache. But when he thought about how the Sacred Mountain had always wanted the wooden box and how it fell into his hands, Sui felt a lot better. After an hour, Sui arrived at the entrance of a trading company. In front of the wide door, there was an endless stream of people coming and going. It was extremely lively. Although there were a few trading companies in the surroundings, they were far less lively than this one. And the signboard of this trading company also surprised Sui. The 3 words Spiritual Treasures Pavilion on the door made Sui feel a sense of familiarity and heartache. This Sword Star city actually had a Spirit Treasures Pavilion, which made Sui rather surprised. His big brother, Merciless West, had said that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was not ordinary. Its origins were mysterious, and its foundation was beyond imagination. It was involved in all kinds of cultivation resources, and there were branches in the entire 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea. Now, Sui believed Lingbao Pavilion's origin and foundation. He didn't expect that there would be a branch of Lingbao Pavilion in the Chaos Region Sword Star City. Ladies and gentlemen, there are too many people inside. Please wait in line for a while. When the time comes, the Lingbao Pavilion will give you a 5% discount. Thank you very much. In front of the bustling crowd, voices could be heard from the gate of the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion. Many people were busy, and they were all disciples of the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion. Business is actually so good. Sui smacked his lips. The Lingbao Pavilion's business was actually packed to the brim. There were branches in the entire 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea. The foundation of the Lingbao Pavilion was really terrifying. No wonder they could buy so many things on credit. Anyway, Sui owed the Lingbao Pavilion a lot of primordial stones, and he had some spiritual herbs and weapons to sell. Sui reckoned that the price he could sell them to the Lingbao Pavilion would be higher. Hence, he just handed them over to the Lingbao Pavilion. There were all kinds of noises and discussions in the surroundings. The Sword Star City under the night sky was no less lively than during the day. Sui listened quietly from the noisy discussions in the surroundings, and he got quite a lot of information. The most talked about news was that there was a rumor of a precious treasure appearing in the mountain. The experts of the Xinjian sect the Green Sanctuary sect, the Lyoha sect, the Seven-Star Sword School, and the Gimdeo sect had all gone there to search for the precious treasure. Many people did not dare to join the fun. It was not because they were afraid of the experts of the Xianjian sect, the Green Sanctuary sect, the Lyoha sect, and the Seven-Star Sword School. It was because the depths of the mountain was the territory of the demon clan. There were a few demon sovereigns there. In the discussions, there were the Purple Elephant Emperor, the Dragon Rhinoceros Emperor, the Black Tortoise Emperor, and the Devouring Spirit Emperor that Su-Yi had met before. Ordinary people did not dare to go deep, as they would be torn apart by the demon clan's barbaric demonic beasts. It was rumored that many people had already been killed. Many people had encountered the barbaric demonic beasts, suffered serious injuries, and fled for their lives. Hence, even if they knew that a precious treasure was about to appear, those who did not have the strength would not dare to dream about it. Among these discussions, there are also people talking about something called the Alliance Conference. It seemed to be very lively, and it was related to the entire Chaos region. It was said that it was a grand event in the entire Chaos region. Recently, there were so many people in the Sword Star City. Su-Yi also knew from the discussions in the surroundings that it was because of the rumor that a precious treasure was about to appear in this place. It had attracted many people. The Sword Star City was the closest city to the destination. Hence, it was exceptionally lively in a short period of time. Many mercenary groups, adventurers, and rogue cultivators could not get close to the destination and could only turn back. However, because of the Beast Tide, they also had some gains. There were also people who had fought with the Beast Tide and suffered great losses. Hence, they queued up to sell spiritual medicine and cultivation resources. Some of them replenished the spiritual medicine and other items that they had. After all, sometimes a healing elixir on one's body was equivalent to having a higher chance of survival. After half an hour, Su-Yi queued up behind the crowd and was finally about to enter the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Make way, make way. Young Lord Ran is here. Make way. Behind the crowd, there was an arrogant and disdainful voice. Following the commotion, a few figures swaggered over. The crowd behind automatically retreated to the sides. Their faces were hurried, but they did not dare to speak. They did not even dare to show too much dissatisfaction. Su-Yi turned his head and frowned slightly. There were a few youths. The one in front was a red-clothed, black-haired youth. He had a handsome face and looked to be about 24-25 years old. He had an arrogant look on his face. On both sides of this youth, there were two other youths who were about the same age. They were even more arrogant. They clustered around the red-clothed, black-haired youth and chased the surrounding crowd away. The five youths all had extraordinary temperaments and carried a treasured sword on their backs, especially the red-clothed, black-haired youth in the middle. He had an invisible aura. Although he was arrogant, he seemed to have some qualifications to be arrogant. Su-Yi recognized this young man, as he'd seen him once outside the city. The young man rode on the heaven-splitting tiger mount, and he seemed to be the Seven-Star Sword sect's young sect leader, and his name seemed to be Ran Yen. Su-Yi had some understanding of the Seven-Star Sword School from the clamor of discussions around him. It seemed that the Seven-Star Sword School, the Green Sanctuary sect, the Gimdeo sect, the Lyoha sect, and the Xianjian sect could be considered the strongest forces in this area. In the entire Chaos region, they could be considered as third-rate forces that were close to second-rate forces. Make way, don't block young Lord Ran's path. Beside Ran Yen, for youth scolded. They clustered around Ran Yen and escorted him to the entrance of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. No one dared to block his path. Su-Yi clenched his teeth, raised his eyebrows, and retreated to the side. Ran Yen and the others had arrogant looks on their faces as they walked side by side, brushing past Su-Yi. Swish! Chapter 967. Su-Yi didn't budge from the collision, but the young man couldn't help but cry out in pain. The pain in his shoulder was as if he had just collided with a piece of steel. Rat, how dare you hit me? Are you looking for death? In an instant, the young man turned around, his face contorted in pain. When he saw that Su-Yi was only a 16 or 17-year-old youth, His eyes were filled with resentment. Filled with anger, he directly sent a slap towards Su-yi. Chi. Just when everyone thought that Su-yi would definitely receive this slap, a shocking scene occurred. Unknowingly, Su-yi's hand had already tightly clasped the young man's wrist. For some reason, the young man couldn't move an inch forward. "How dare you?" The young man's face that was filled with pain and anger was now flushed red. He stared at Su-yi with anger, and shock. "You were the one who hit me. Don't go overboard. Next time, it won't be your hand that will be crippled." As Su-yi's cold voice fell, a cracking sound was heard from the young man's wrist. It was as if his bones were being crushed. "Ah, my hand, my hand." The young man's angry, and shocked eyes were filled with fear at this moment. A mournful cry was heard. The young man's face instantly turned malevolent. His entire body was sprawled on the ground. He held onto the wrist that he had just attacked and howled incessantly. This scene was beyond everyone's imagination. Instantly, numerous gazes fell on Su-yi's body, carefully sizing up Su-yi. "Young Master Ran, he crippled my hand, my hand." The young man howled in pain. The wrist of the hand that he had just attacked had been crushed. It was equivalent to being completely crippled. That kind of pain was heart-wrenching. His expression was hideous, and his eyes were filled with resentment and fear. "I'm afraid that young man has gotten himself into big trouble. Someone actually dared to attack a disciple of the 7-Star Sword School." In an instant, someone whispered. Everyone's gaze changed greatly. Everyone knew that the young man who had made a move was in big trouble. "I didn't expect that someone would dare to touch a disciple of my 7-Star Sword School." Ranyan stopped. When a young man fell to the ground and screamed, his gaze fell on Su-yi. His originally arrogant gaze was instantly filled with coldness. He stared at Su-yi and coldly said, "You crippled his hand? Yes, if there's a next time, I won't just do this. I'll take his life." Su-yi said calmly. Initially, he wanted to settle the matter peacefully and even retreated to the side. However, this young man actually wanted to humiliate him. How could Su-yi tolerate this? He had already shown mercy. Good. This brat is really arrogant." Ranyan stared at Su-yi and said the word good 3 times in a row. There was a faint smile on his face. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly as he recognized Su-yi. He said, "I remember. You blocked my way outside the city gate, and I spared your life. I didn't expect that you would dare to block my way again. You're mistaken. Both times, it was you who wanted to hit me." Su-yi looked at Ranyan and calmly said, "I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. You dare to touch a disciple of my 7-Star Sword School. The Azure Moon mercenary group outside the city wall is your fate. I'll give you a chance. Go hang yourself on the city wall, or I'll cripple you right now." Ranyan looked coldly at Su-yi and spoke in a condescending and domineering manner. "You? I'm afraid you don't have the qualifications," Su-yi said indifferently. There was a faint fluctuation of coldness in his calm eyes. Originally, he didn't want to cause trouble, but Su-yi definitely wasn't afraid of trouble. Su-yi really didn't care about these spoiled brats. Hearing Su-yi's words, Ranyan's gaze became even colder. Then, his expression suddenly relaxed, and he revealed a smile. He said to Su, "Good, very good. I've never met a brat as arrogant as you. You'll pay the price for your arrogance." As they stared at Ranyan, everyone could feel the absolute killing intent on his smiling face. This brat is definitely courting death. The remaining 3 youths all stared coldly at Su-yi. Their killing intent surged. However, their companion had been crippled in a single move. They weren't fools. They knew that this youth seemed to have extraordinary strength, so they didn't dare to act rashly. "I'll wait and see how you'll make me pay the price." The coldness in Su-yi's eyes became even more intense. "Young Lord Ran, we're honored by your presence. I apologize for not going out to meet you. Please forgive me." At this moment, a hearty laugh sounded. A middle-aged man walked out from the Lingbao Hall. The middle-aged man seemed to be walking slowly, but as soon as he finished speaking, he directly appeared in front of Su-yi and Ranyan. His appearance was very coordinated, as if he was supposed to be standing between Su Yi and Ran Yen. Unfathomable. He's an expert. Su Yi's gaze fell on the middle-aged man. He was dressed in a Confucian robe and had an elegant temperament. However, from his aura, Su Yi was sure that this man was definitely a terrifying expert. His aura was unfathomable. Who are you? Ran Yin seemed to feel that the middle-aged man in front of him had an extraordinary temperament. He frowned and his attitude became much better. The Lingbao Hall. Although this was only a branch of the Lingbao Hall in Swordstar City, even if his father came personally, he would have to be respectful. I'm a shopkeeper in the Lingbao Hall. My surname is Xiaoho. If young Lord Ran wants to be polite, you could just call me Shopkeeper Xiaoho. Shopkeeper Xiaoho smiled and was very polite. Shopkeeper Xiaoho. Ran Yin didn't dare to be arrogant. A shopkeeper in the Lingbao Hall wasn't an ordinary person. Even his father had to be polite to him. It seems that there's a small conflict. However, I'm sure young Lord Rand knows the rules of the Lingbao Hall. Please take care of us in the Lingbao Hall. Shopkeeper Xiaoho glanced at the scene, and his gaze swept past Su Yi. In an instant, his gaze fell on Su Yi, and he couldn't help but linger for a moment. Shopkeeper Xiaoho then looked at Su Yi and Ran Yin and said at the same time, although the injuries of the injured are not light, the Lingbao Hall has a kind of elixir that has an excellent effect on such injuries. If consumed, I believe that the injured will be as good as new in 2 months. Today, the Lingbao Hall is indebted to all of you. It's also our fault that we didn't serve you well. The elixir will be provided by the Lingbao Hall to heal the injured. If it can resolve the conflict between the two of you, that would be great. In the future, when the two of you come to the Lingbao Hall, you will be our distinguished guests. Why don't the two of you give me some face? This. Chapter 968. All right, as long as he apologizes to me, I can pretend that this never happened. Ran Yin looked at Su Yi and nodded to Xiaoho. If he could use this opportunity to establish a good relationship with the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, his father would praise him greatly when he found out. It was indeed a good deal, but that kid had taken advantage of it. Moreover, Xiaoho had promised to take out medicinal pills to treat his subordinates, so he had to give him face no matter what. Xiaoho looked at Su Yi with a smile on his face, but he was a little surprised in his heart. Little brother, what about you? Such a young man gave him a feeling of maturity despite his young age, which made him unable to see through him. Especially that young man's eyes, which looked straight at him without the slightest hint of evasion, even made his heart and soul fluctuate for no reason. He was willing to be a peacemaker because he could see that this young man was not old, but he was able to injure the young man from the 7-star sword school with one move, so he was definitely not a simple person. He didn't know what kind of background this young man had, so he was quite curious and wanted to see. I suggest that you get lost as far as you can and don't provoke me. Otherwise, even if you have the 7-star sword school behind you, I don't mind taking your life. Su Yi stared at Ran Yin with an extremely cold gaze and a hint of impatience. His whole body emitted a murderous aura, as if he didn't take this spoiled brat seriously at all. Such a murderous aura caused Ran Yin and his subordinates to feel a chill rise from the soles of their feet to their heads, as if they were about to be intimidated by this young man in front of them. On the side, Xiaoho of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion also raised his eyebrows, feeling very incredulous and becoming even more curious in his heart. In the territory of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, no matter who it was, they would give him some face, but this young man in front of him was actually so overbearing. He mediated between them, but who would have thought that this young man would not give him any face? Without a doubt, this young man did not take this so-called young sect leader Rand seriously at all. Kid, you're courting death. Ran Yin suppressed the panic that suddenly rose in his heart. At this time, his face was already somewhat ashen, and he felt extremely embarrassed. Originally, in order to save face for the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, he had gone along with shopkeeper Xiaoho's request to step down a step. This could already be considered as letting this kid off easy. But who would have thought that this brat actually didn't know what was good for him? Ran Yin's face was ugly, and his aura unconsciously leaked out. Shopkeeper Xiaoho, I naturally have to give face to the Spirit Treasure Pavilion. However, this brat doesn't know what's good for him. You can't blame me for this. Ran Yan's words were cold as he clasped his hands together towards shopkeeper Xiaoho. At the same time, his eyes were fixed on Su Yi, carrying a bone-chilling coldness. Young man, we can't break the rules of the Lingbao Hall. Please go somewhere else and settle the grudge between you. Shopkeeper Xiaoho didn't really need to get angry. Without batting an eyelid, he looked at Su Yi and motioned for him to go somewhere else. His meaning was very clear. If you don't accept my offer to be your mediator, then I want to see who you are and where you came from. If you want to fight or kill, go somewhere else. Just stay away from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Brat, just wait for your death. The few people from the 7-Star Sword School all sneered. They looked at Su Yi as if they were looking at a dead man. In Sword Star City, most of those who dared to provoke the 7-Star Sword School didn't have a good ending. There were even examples on the city wall outside. Brat, aren't you very arrogant? If you have the guts, then fight with me. I'll let you know what the consequences of provoking the 7-Star Sword School are. Ran Yin sneered. He turned his body and motioned for Su Yi to go with him to another place to fight. Not interested. However, Su Yi didn't even look at Ran Yin. Instead, he turned around and said to shopkeeper Xiaoho, I want to enter the Spirit Treasures Pavilion to exchange for something. After Su Yi finished speaking, everyone present was stunned, especially the few people from the 7-Star Sword School. They almost laughed out loud. What did this brat say? He wanted to enter the Spirit Treasures Pavilion? Are you kidding me? Is there something wrong with his ears? Didn't he hear what shopkeeper Xiaoho said just now? It was obvious that he didn't want to get involved in this matter anymore. He already made it clear that he wanted you to go somewhere else to settle your grudges. Is the Spirit Treasures Pavilion a place where you can enter just because you want to? What do you think his place is? However, just as everyone was speechless, Su Yi took out an item and waved it in front of shopkeeper Xiaoho. Then, under the shocked gazes of the few people from the 7-Star Sword School, shopkeeper Xiaoho's face suddenly trembled. Then he bowed slightly and saluted Su Yi. I didn't know that an honored guest was coming. Please come in. The middle-aged man quickly turned around and hurriedly led Su Yi into the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, ignoring Ran Yin and the others. The few people from the 7-Star Sword School looked at each other. Their faces stiffened. They were all confused and couldn't figure out the situation for a long time. Ran Yan's face was boiling hot. It was as if he had been slapped hard in the face and still didn't know what had happened. This slap was a little stupefying. They were truly unable to understand why shopkeeper Xiaoho had actually directly abandoned them and left without even sparing them a glance. Exactly what was the reason for such a huge contrast in attitude from before and after? Could it be that this brat actually had some kind of unusual identity? Young Master Ran, what was that brat holding in his hand just now? After a while, one of Ran Yan's subordinates came up to him and asked curiously. That seemed to be a card from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Ran Yin recalled that the brat had taken out a card from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, but it wasn't that high. As the young master of the 7-Star Sword School, he had naturally heard of the different grades of the VIP cards in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. There were several types of VIP cards. Those who could hold a VIP card in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion not only represented strength, but also an extremely high status. His father, as the master of sect, also had a VIP card, but it was only the lowest grade. He didn't have the qualifications to obtain any other cards, let alone Ran Yin. Therefore, Ran Yin really didn't know what kind of background that brat had to be able to take out a VIP card from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. A VIP card from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion only means that you can receive good treatment in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. It can't be a life-saving charm. Ran Yin thought for a moment. His eyes became gloomy and filled with murderous intent. He said coldly, Go and inform Guardian Lu to send someone to guard here. I don't believe that this brat can stay in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion forever. Go to hell, young master. A young man immediately responded and left in a hurry. Chapter 9:69. Honored Guest. What do you need from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion? Su-yi was invited into the Spirit Treasures Pavilion by shopkeeper Xiaoho. He was led directly to an elegant room on the top floor and sat down. A disciple of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion served him good tea. Shopkeeper Xiaoho, you don't have to be so polite. I just have some things to sell. Su-yi said to shopkeeper Xiaoho. After the last auction, he also knew the magical use of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion's black card, so he took it out just now. However, Su-yi was a little anxious. After all, he owed the Spirit Treasures Pavilion so many vitality stones. To him, it was an astronomical figure. He did not know when he would be able to pay it all back. Because of this, he was very polite to shopkeeper Xiaoho. Even though he had the black card in his hand, he did not put on the airs of a distinguished guest. Moreover, it was not difficult for Su-yi to see something. Although shopkeeper Xiaoho was very polite to him and treated him as a distinguished guest, he did not look at him in shock like the others in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. I'm afraid shopkeeper Xiaoho's status is not low. Su-yi thought in his heart. He only felt that the middle-aged man in front of him had a high status in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. He did not know why he would appear in Swordstar City. As a distinguished guest of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, if you need anything, just let me know. Shopkeeper Xiaoho smiled and said to Su-yi. Su-yi nodded and did not dawdle. He directly took out a space bag and took out a large pile of spiritual herbs and many bottles and jars. Su-yi had long planned to sell some spiritual herbs and pills, so he was prepared. He had already taken these things out from the mysterious space. Seeing these spiritual herbs, shopkeeper Xiaoho raised his eyebrows again. With a very surprised expression, he picked up a stalk and placed it in his hand to observe. This is the flame spirit grass. It's actually about to reach the star grade. Shopkeeper Xiaoho was surprised, and his tone was filled with amazement. He was holding a stalk of flame spirit grass in his hand. It was a spiritual herb. However, a normal flame spirit grass was usually at the beginning of the star grade. However, the stalk in his hand had actually reached the star grade and was about to cross a big level. How could he not be surprised? And these, however, shopkeeper Xiaoho's surprise had just begun. As he observed, he realized that all the spiritual herbs that Su-yi took out were of a higher grade than they should be. This made him click his tongue in amazement. There's such a wonderful thing. Shopkeeper Xiaoho exclaimed in surprise. He really wanted to know where the young man in front of him had found these spirit medicines that were of a higher grade than they should be, but he didn't feel it was appropriate to ask. These pills, shopkeeper Xiaoho suppressed the shock in his heart with great difficulty. However, when he opened a bottle of elixir pills, he was stunned once again. With his strength, he naturally couldn't sense that there was something extremely different about the person in the bottle. Just like the other spirit herbs, they were all above the grade they were supposed to be. And Xiaoho, for you, at Lord, for you. In the end, shopkeeper Xiaoho put away his astonishment and asked Su-yi. Normally, although there were many pills and spiritual herbs, they would not be worth much because they were not of high grade. But it was different now. The increase in grade had a big difference in effect. Naturally, the price would increase exponentially, and they could be exchanged for a lot of primordial stones. Spirit Treasures Pavilion, just give me an estimate. I still need to pick some things. Just deduct the cost. You don't have to give me the rest. It's more or less my repayment to Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Su-yi said. He now believed in the reputation of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. He knew that they would not cheat him. However, Su-yi felt a little unhappy when he thought of the huge debt of 1 billion one-star grade primordial stones. If he sold spiritual herbs and elixirs like this and went out to rob, he would not be able to repay this huge sum of money within a year. However, it was better to repay it as much as possible. Okay, please wait a moment. I'll send someone to do it. Shopkeeper Xiaoho did not ask much. He nodded and then turned to leave. Su-yi did not wait. He wandered around Spirit Treasures Pavilion and casually picked some pills. In addition, there were many fresh spiritual herbs. Of course, he had to make good use of the special features of the mysterious space. It would be best if he could plan a large area of spiritual herbs. In terms of units in his previous life, he could plant a few tons of elixirs to improve the quality. It would not take much for him, Su-yi, to become rich. However, this was just a thought. The cost of these things would definitely be a terrifying number that would make one's scalp numb. When Su-yi finished choosing the things he wanted, shopkeeper Xiaoho appeared again. He clearly told Su-yi the price of all the items, including the amount of primordial stones that could be exchanged for them. After deducting the cost of Su-yi's purchases, the rest was used to repay the debt. Thank you, shopkeeper Xiaoho. Su-yi did not stay for long. He turned and left Spirit Treasure's pavilion. Looking at the young man's back, shopkeeper Xiaoho's eyes were filled with astonishment. He really could not see through such a young man. Sir, where did this young man come from? Look, front page, chapter, section N on hashtag Sizizero. An old man appeared behind shopkeeper Xiaoho and asked respectfully. He is so young and already has a black card. He also owes a huge debt to Spirit Treasure's pavilion. Naturally, he can only be the legendary person. A smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face as he thought of the legendary person. In the current world, there were only a handful of people who could hold the black card of Spirit Treasure's pavilion. Naturally, the identity of the young man was obvious. Could it be that the black card in his hand was signed by that person? The old man's face changed and was filled with shock. That person's vision is very good. A young man like this is indeed difficult to see through. The Central Province seems to be searching for him all over the world. Who would have thought that he would come to the Chaos region? Truly unexpected. Shopkeeper Xiaoho sighed, feeling a little emotional. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. He was extremely interested in this young man, Su-yi. Sir, the people from the 7-Star Sword School are still waiting outside. They must be going to attack that young man. Should we? Suddenly, the old man looked up and asked such a question. If it was an ordinary person, Spirit Treasure's pavilion would not meddle in their business. But this young man was different. He had the black card of Spirit Treasure's pavilion, and it was signed by that person. Naturally, they could not ignore him. Now that he was in trouble, if necessary, Spirit Treasure's pavilion would not sit by and do nothing. I'm afraid you are worrying too much. Chapter 970. The entire central continent is looking for him. Looking at shopkeeper Xiaoho slowly leaving, the old man was silent for a moment, then suddenly thought of a possibility. His body suddenly trembled, and he couldn't help but be shocked on the spot. This young man, could he be the champion of the Sacred Martial Assembly? He also recalled some of the recent rumors. The matter of the Sacred Martial Assembly in the central continent had caused an uproar and spread throughout the world. The strongest power, the Holy Mountain, had actually suffered losses time and time again. As a member of the upper echelons of the Spirit Treasure Hall, the old man had naturally heard of these things. The champion of the Sacred Martial Assembly in the central continent, such a young man, had risen up in a heaven-defying manner. Suddenly, he was like a rising star, hanging at the top of the sky. Even the holy sun of the Holy Mountain paled in comparison to him. If it really is him, then the one who will be in trouble will really be the 7-Star Sword School. The old man whispered and then hurriedly jogged away, as if he really wanted to find a place to watch a good show. The streets outside the Spirit Treasure Hall were already packed with people, and not even a drop of water could trickle through. In the middle of the crowd, there was a large empty space. There were a few figures standing there, as well as a huge, barbaric demon beast. Just who is it that actually offended the young sect master of the 7-Star Sword School, to actually have him block people outside the Spirit Treasure Hall? I'm afraid it won't be simple. Even the heaven-splitting tiger has been brought here. If it wasn't for giving the Spirit Treasure Hall face, I'm afraid that Ranyin would have directly killed his way in. Hee, this is going to be a good show. He actually dares to offend the people of the 7-Star Sword School in Swordstar City. This is simply courting death. Many people who had just rushed over to join in the fun were discussing fervently. All of them had the attitude of watching a good show. Everyone knew that the Swordstar City was the territory of the 7-Star Sword School. They didn't know who the person in the Spirit Treasure Hall was, but he actually dared to offend the young sect master of the seven-star sword school. Wasn't that the same as courting death? Looking at the heaven-splitting tiger that was revealing its ferocious aura, the aura of the demon illusionary stage exploded, causing people to be able to smell an extremely dangerous aura, even from far away. Everyone felt that someone was going to be unlucky next. The manager of the Lingbao Hall didn't want to get involved in this, but he suddenly invited that young man into the hall. I guess that young man is not a simple person. Someone who can make the Lingbao Pavilion treat him so politely must be someone important. The people who had seen the conflict between Su Yi and Ran Yin were guessing at this time. They only felt that Su Yi was not a nobody. He might not be worse than Ran Yin. No matter how much background he has, I'm afraid he won't be able to bear the consequences today. That youth is so young. No matter how strong he is, he can't be that strong. Exactly. The young sect leader of the seven-star sword school isn't simple. Supposedly, he has already attained a cultivation at the 8th level of the Origin True stage. Compared to that youth, he has the advantage of age. There's also this heaven-splitting tiger. That's the mount of the seven-star sword school's sect leader, Ran Jianxian, a formidable existence at the 3rd level of the demon illusionary stage. There were still many people that didn't look favorably upon Su Yi. They felt that he was alone and powerless, and it was impossible for him to compare with the seven-star sword school. With the existence of the young sect leader Ran and the heaven-splitting tiger, unless the senior of the youth sect made a move, otherwise, only death would await him if he relied on himself. Did all of you see that gray-robed middle-aged man by young sect leader Ran Yan's side? He's the vice city governor of Sword Star City, the guardian of the seven-star sword school. His cultivation is profound and has attained the 8th level of the Origin Void stage since long ago. Suddenly, someone spoke out mysteriously, and he pointed at the crowd of people from the seven-star sword school as he spoke secretly to the people by his side. 8th level of the Origin Void stage. Everyone gasped when they heard this, and all of them felt icy coldness suffuse their backs, as if they'd fallen into an ice cellar, and their entire bodies froze. 8th level of the Origin Void stage. What sort of concept was that? Such a cultivation could be considered to be an absolute expert, and even if placed in a first-rate power, the expert would be able to obtain a certain status. With this person by the side, there probably wouldn't be any mishaps today. Young sect leader, that kid has come out. Right when everyone was discussing, one of Ran Yan's subordinates spoke out to him. Everyone looked towards the entrance of the Spirit Treasure Pavilion when they heard this, and they saw the figure of a youth slowly walking out from within to appear under the gazes of everyone. Boss, that fellow seems to be waiting for you. This youth was precisely Su Yi, and handsome Su stuck out his head from within Su Yi's embrace as he spoke. There was no need for handsome Su to remind him, as Su Yi had already noticed everything. Su Yi didn't really care about the formation that Ran Yin had set up, but coldness couldn't help but arise in his heart. A 3rd-level demon void stage heaven-rending tiger, an 8th-level origin void stage expert, really wanted to kill him wholeheartedly. Kid, let's see where you can escape to today. When he saw Su Yi appear, a member of the seven-star sword school shouted out coldly, and his icy cold gaze stared at Su Yi as if he was staring at a dead person. Ran Yin sneered as well. Just as he'd expected, it was impossible for this kid to stay in the Spirit Treasure Pavilion forever, and it was impossible for Manager Xiaohou to really protect him forever. So what if he possessed the VIP card of the Spirit Treasure Pavilion? It wasn't a life-saving talisman. This young master will give you another chance. Kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times, then break one of your arms, and I can consider sparing your life. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Ran Yin sneered as he looked at Su Yi. He originally looked down upon a youth like this, but because Chunshi had repeatedly gone against his wishes and coupled with Manager Xiaohou's actions from before, it was truly like a resounding slap that struck his face, and it was extremely painful. It was impossible for Ran Yin to go look for Manager Xiaohou, so all of this naturally fell on this kid before him. Good words are unable to persuade a damnable ghost. As he looked at the group of people with overbearing auras before him, Su-Yi glanced indifferently at Ran Yen and said, "I've already given you a chance to fuck off, yet you just had to provoke me. Now that I think about it, these words are truly wonderful when used on you." At the same time that Su-Yi spoke, his expression had gone completely cold, as he didn't want to waste his breath on these people. Since they wanted to look for trouble, then with Su-Yi's character, there was absolutely no reason for him to avoid it. The Seven-Star Sword School was formidable indeed, but Su-Yi even dared to provoke the Sacred Mountain, let alone a mere third-rate power in the Chaos region. Moreover, the thing that gave Su-Yi the most confidence was that he knew the sect leader and other higher-ups of the Seven-Star Sword School were currently going around in circles in the dense forest in the mountain range outside the city, and they were searching for that enormous fluctuation and seeking fortuitous encounters and benefits. In this city, with merely a third-level demon void stage, heaven, rending tiger, and an 8th-level origin stage guardian, Su-Yi wasn't afraid in the slightest. Chapter 971. Listening to Su-Yi's words, Ran Yen was on the verge of exploding in anger. This brat was so arrogant that it made him furious. He only wanted to teach this brat a lesson. With a loud shout, Ran Yan's figure soared into the sky and charged directly at Su-Yi. At the same time, the spiritual weapon longsword in his hand had already bloomed with a bright light, and it suddenly slashed down, aiming directly at Su-Yi's head. When such a sword light was released, it had a terrifying aura, accompanied by the ear-piercing sound of the sword, as if it was punishing the heavens and killing the earth. In the void, sword shadows appeared inexplicably, as if thousands of swords were flying in the sky, and also as if the sky was filled with stars, dazzling the eyes. These sword lights were extremely sharp, and all of them were attacking Su-Yi. This young sect leader Ran's strength is really terrifying. This Starry Sky sword technique has already reached the point of perfection. In the distance, someone exclaimed in shock, marveling at Ran Yan's means. Young sect leader Ran's talent was not ordinary, and he was much stronger than the average person. Many people had sympathy in their eyes, and some people couldn't stand the tyranny of the Seven-Star Sword School. At this time, they couldn't help but feel worried for Su-Yi, not knowing how the young man would be able to withstand such a move. However, in the next moment, a scene that made everyone's jaws drop appeared. The young man opposite Ran Yen stood motionless, and the sword lights in front of him were like a storm, but his body was as steady as a rock, not moving at all. At the same time, although it seemed slow, he stretched out an arm at an extremely fast speed, swimming in the terrifying and tyrannical sword lights, as if he was passing through leaves and picking flowers. In the end, a primordial chi turned into a handprint, and from the front of Su-Yi's palm, it struck Ran Yan's chest brazenly. Puff! When the attack landed, the sword shadows that filled the sky suddenly disappeared, and they came quickly, but they left even faster. Ran Yan's throat made a muffled sound, and his body flew backward. A mouthful of blood spurted out, spilling into the void. One move. The Seven-Star Sword School's junior master, a level 8 Yuan Jun realm martial artist, was severely injured by a single strike. He didn't even have the strength to resist. On the other hand, the young man looked as if nothing had happened. Not even the corner of his clothes had been moved. This scene was too shocking, and it completely refreshed the understanding of many people. A youth who looked like he was only 15 or 16 years old was actually this strong. Young master. Everyone from the Seven-Star Sword School was stunned. Seeing their young master being sent flying with a single blow, they were all rooted to the spot. This kid is actually so strong that even the junior sect master of the Seven-Star Sword School is no match for him. With such strength, he has definitely reached the origin void realm. The surrounding crowd immediately burst into discussions. This result was beyond the expectations of too many people. What a powerful kid! In the Seven-Star Sword School's lineup, The middle-aged man who was called Protector Lu trembled and looked at Su Yi in shock. With his cultivation, it was not difficult for him to sense that this young man's strength was far beyond Ran Yan's. He had definitely reached the origin void realm. In front of him, their young sect master kept jumping around like a jumping clown. At this moment, Protector Lu couldn't help but think deeper. He was afraid that Su Yi had a powerful background. If he was an outstanding disciple from one of the second-rate or even first-rate forces in the Chaos Zone, it would be better not to provoke him. With this thought in mind, he didn't immediately attack Su Yi after Ran Yin was sent flying. Puff! After being injured by Su Yi's palm, Ran Yin couldn't get up for a long time. After spitting out another mouthful of blood, his face became even paler. The other 7-star sword school disciples didn't dare to attack Su Yi. They all looked at the young man with fear and trepidation. Humph! Feeling that these people didn't dare to stop him, Su Yi snorted coldly and stepped away, about to leave. Now that he had many lice, he wasn't afraid of the itch. However, it was better to avoid trouble. There was no need to fight with a powerful force. Although he was not afraid of trouble, he didn't have so much time to waste with these people. Watching Su Yi walk away and walk past him, Ran Yin once again felt the sweetness in his throat. He was about to spit out another mouthful of blood. His face was extremely ugly. Many cultivators around him were all looking at him and pointing at him, causing Ran Yin to feel extremely sullen. Such a young Origin Void Realm expert. His background is definitely not simple. Ran Yin has kicked an iron plate. He has provoked someone he shouldn't provoke. The 7-star Sword School's people are arrogant. It's good that he learned a lesson this time. In the future, we will have less trouble in Sword Star City. People should know their limits. Look at that young man. If he wants to leave now, no one in the 7-star Sword School will dare to stop him. Perhaps he is also afraid of provoking the powerful existence behind him, so he has some misgivings. Many people open their mouths to speak. They were amazed by Su Yi's strength, but at the same time, they were gloating over Ran Yan's defeat. These words, word by word, entered Ran Yan's ears, causing his originally pale face to turn into the color of a pig's liver. Seeing that the young man had already walked past him, with his back facing him, Ran Yan's eyes suddenly became fierce, and he gave a look to sky-splitting void beside him. Roar! A ferocious roar brazenly rose into the air, like a thunderous rumble, causing the entire Sword Star City to shake. The fierce tiger roared as its huge body stepped into the air. A pair of huge tiger claws emitted a blazing light. It was as if a tidal wave was churning with a great momentum. A swift and fierce aura suffused the air, carrying the aura of execution and destruction. The body of the sky-splitting void tiger pounced straight towards Su Yi's head. This scene came so suddenly that it caused the surrounding spectators to be caught off guard. No one had imagined that the sky-splitting void tiger would actually suddenly make a move at this moment and launch a sneak attack on the young man. Be careful, someone reminded Su Yi, as he didn't wish to see the young man die under the terrifying tiger claws. Unlike Ran Yin, the sky-splitting void tiger was the mount of the 7-star Sword School sect leader, Ran Jinshin. It was in existence at the 3rd level of the Demon Void stage, and it was much stronger than Ran Yin. Under a sudden sneak attack, even a 5th or 6th level Origin Void stage expert would probably suffer a great loss, let alone a young man like that. Swish! In the next instant, under the stunned gazes of everyone, the pair of sharp tiger claws directly descended onto the young man's body. A terrifying strength burst out and directly tore the figure into pieces. Alas, unfortunately, he was still unable to escape the hands of the 7-star Sword School. The surrounding people sighed with emotion. They felt that the young man's death was a pity, as he'd offended someone he shouldn't have offended. Wait! Chapter 972. Ran Yin still had a cold smile on his face. He did not consider the possibility that there was an expert behind Su Yi. He only wanted to kill this youth here to vent the hatred in his heart. Seeing the Auka heaven-splitting tiger fiercely pouncing towards the youth and tearing his body into pieces, Ran Yan's heart couldn't help but feel extremely carefree. However, in the next moment, he was stunned. Su Yi's figure was torn apart, but there was no blood that splashed out. This made him realize that something was amiss. Humph, evil creature. In an instant, such a cold snort sounded in everyone's ears. Immediately after, the youth's figure appeared on the other side of the Auka heaven-splitting tiger, barely dodging the ferocious attack just now. Roar! Seeing that he had dodged, the Auka heaven-splitting tiger was obviously surprised as well. It roared once again, and once again brewed up a ferocious attack. A terrifying energy surged out and swept towards Su Yi, enveloping his body. But in the next moment, a terrifying pressure descended from the sky and suddenly appeared in the middle of the arena, suppressing the Auka heaven-splitting tiger's mind, causing its body to tremble violently. The gigantic tiger's body leaped into the air, and under the intimidation of the pressure, it suddenly became sluggish. Its body fell straight down and suddenly smashed onto the ground, letting out a howl. "Since you want to die, how can I not fulfill your wish?" Su Yi said coldly. He glanced at the Auka heaven-splitting tiger indifferently, and a large blade appeared in his hand. Under everyone's gazes, Su Yi stepped out and arrived in front of the heaven-splitting tiger. Raising the large blade in his hand, he brazenly slashed down. At the same time, the primordial supreme technique in his body continued to circulate, releasing a monstrous aura that suppressed the Auka heaven-splitting tiger's body, causing it to have the heart to resist when facing the threat of death. However, it did not have the slightest bit of courage, and could only allow Su Yi's large blade to slash down. Uffed! With a muffled sound, Su Yi raised his blade and slashed down, causing the Auka heaven-splitting tiger's head to fall. Its huge body immediately fell down and smashed onto the ground, producing a loud sound. A rain of blood accompanied by dust flew everywhere. This scene stunned everyone present. Everyone, including the 7-star sword school and the surrounding onlookers, were stunned on the spot, unable to react for a moment. They truly didn't dare believe that a heaven-rending tiger at the 3rd level of the Demon Void stage was actually beheaded just like this at the hands of that young man, and it was deader than dead. Everyone was stunned. They looked at each other and saw the extreme shock in each other's eyes. The heaven-splitting tiger was the mount of the 7-star sword school's sect master, Ran Jinxian. It was extremely ferocious, but it actually died just like that. All of this happened too quickly, causing people to feel a sense of absent-mindedness. At the side, Ran Yin opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. However, he saw Su Yi's figure flash and instantly appear in front of him. "I've given you so many chances, but you didn't know how to cherish them. You just had to provoke me." The icy cold words sounded out by Ran Yan's ears, and at the same time, a ghastly cold aura was transmitted over, causing all the hairs on Ran Yan's body to stand on end. This voice was too familiar. Besides the youth that beheaded the Auka heaven-splitting tiger with a single strike, who else could it be? Suddenly, Su Yi had already approached Ran Yan's side, and like a god of death, he brandished the blood-stained broadsword in his hand and fiercely chopped down. "Kid, you dare!" At the side, the 7-star sword school's protector Lu was greatly shocked when he saw this, and directly flashed out, wanting to save Ran Yan. The aura of Su Yi's attack was truly too ferocious. Once the blade struck out, it was without any fanciful movements, and went straight for Ran Yan's throat. Looking at the situation from before, Ran Yan really didn't even have the strength to resist in front of him. Furthermore, he was intimidated by the youth's aura, and was in a daze for a long time. How could he still have the consciousness to dodge? If this strike landed, Ran Yan's life would really be lost here. Sure enough, at the same time the middle-aged man shouted. The broadsword that was still stained with the blood of the Auka heaven-splitting tiger had already landed in front of Ran Yan. Poochie, another muffled sound rang out, accompanied by a spurt of boiling blood. Ran Yan's head soared into the sky, and his hot blood shot into the sky, as if it was raining blood. The young sect master of the 7-star sword school was killed in a single strike. Protector Lu pulled him out, but he only managed to pull Ran Yan's headless corpse and was unable to save him at the last moment. Young sect master Ran is dead. The crowd on the street trembled, and everyone had an expression of disbelief. They had yet to completely recover from the impact of the Ayuka Heaven's splitting tiger being killed, and now that Ran Yan had been beheaded, how could they not be shocked? No one dared to believe such a fact. They could not believe what they were seeing. This young man is so ferocious. Everyone present was overwhelmed with shock, and the expression in their eyes as they looked at Su Yi changed again and again. At this point, no one would think that this youth was a brainless person. If the other party dared to go head-to-head with Ran Yan in Sword Star City, he definitely had the corresponding strength and confidence. I'm afraid this is even harder to deal with. Once young sect master Ran dies, the 7-star sword school will definitely not let this matter rest. Someone said in a deep voice, once Ran Yan died, the 7-star sword school would probably come out in full force to deal with this youth. Little bastard, how dare you? At this time, Protector Lu was already enraged. His beard and hair stood on end, and he was like an angry lion as he stared at Su Yi. He threw down Ran Yan's headless corpse and looked at Su Yi with burning eyes. A terrifying aura boiled around his body, like waves of ferocious waves, surging and howling. Today, I'll tear you into 1,000 pieces. Protector Lu shouted loudly as a long sword appeared in his hand. It flowed with a 7-colored light and surged with a terrifying sword chi, and it was like a rainbow that was held in his hand. Heaven Splitter Tiger and the young sect master were successively killed before him, and if the sect master were to blame him, he would not be able to bear such a crime. Only by taking down this murderer would he be able to make up for his mistake and slightly dispel the sect master's rage. As he spoke, Protector Lu moved. He suddenly struck out with his sword, and it seemed as if the roar of a dragon and tiger was vast and mighty in the sky. His cultivation at the 8th level of the Origin Void stage fully erupted, and light shot into the sky with an imposing aura that even caused the entire Sword Star City to tremble. Boss, let me deal with this old kid. Within Su Yi's embrace, little handsome Su spoke out as he watched Protector Lu approach with a ferocious aura. All right, Su Yi nodded in agreement. Then he took a few steps back. Chapter 973. On the other hand, Su Yi himself had just stepped into the Origin Void stage, and there was a huge gap between him and Protector Lu. If he were to fight with Protector Lu, he would probably be at a disadvantage. So, Q0U, instead of that, why not let little handsome Su, a 9th level Demon Void stage cultivator, make a move and end the battle quickly? That kid is probably in trouble. Many people in the surroundings cried out in surprise when they saw Protector Lu make a move, and they were worried for Su Yi. From their point of view, the young man seemed to be stunned by Protector Lu's aura, and he actually did not dodge or counterattack. But soon, they all saw a tiny black shadow rush out from the young man's bosom, and it shot out like an arrow leaving the bow to meet Protector Lu's ferocious sword light. The black shadow's speed was extremely fast, and it instantly rushed into the sword light that filled the sky. Its speed did not slow down at all, and it only stopped when it arrived in front of Protector Lu. A bird. Only now did everyone see the black shadow's appearance clearly. It turned out to be an ordinary-looking little bird, but it was this little bird that was not affected by the sword light, and it quickly appeared in front of Protector Lu, and it directly raised one of its wings. If the top is unclean, the bottom will be unclean. Today, I'll let all of you 7-star Sword School remember that not everyone is someone you can offend. A clear voice reverberated in the sky, and it was heard by everyone. Then little handsome Su's little wing descended and directly slapped Protector Lu's body. A terrifying aura burst out, and a vast and mighty destructive energy instantly appeared under this wing. Bang! Along with a muffled explosion, Protector Lu's body directly exploded into a scarlet blood mist that enshrouded the air. The entire street instantly fell into a dead silence, and one could even hear a pin drop. Everyone held their breaths, not daring to make a sound. Such a scene was truly too shocking, and it was simply unbelievable. An existence at the 8th level of the Origin Void stage was instantly annihilated into nothingness, and he died to the point not even dregs remained. Such a scene caused the eyes of the powerhouses present to almost pop out. "Little handsome, let's go," Su-yi called out, then turned around with the intention of leaving. He couldn't stay here for too long. The 7-Star Sword School's young sect leader, a protector, and their sect leader's mount had all died here, causing this place to become a place of trouble, and it was better to leave as soon as possible. Boss, bring the heaven-splitting tiger along." Seeing that Su-yi was about to leave, handsome Su hurriedly called out, "The heavens is heaven, splitting tiger's tiger," and it was a ready-made meat. Su-yi had bought quite a lot of oil, salt, sauces and pots and pans, bowls and bowls, ladles and pots and pans, and bowls and bowls, pots and pans, and Su to the side, to the sex food. Protector, the hand, and the little to the sex, to the young, to protector, and guard and to leave. Sword Star City was the territory of the 7-Star Sword sect, and if he still didn't leave, there would probably be even more trouble. Gulp. After watching Su-yi and little handsome Su leave, someone in the surrounding crowd gulped down a mouthful of saliva. Then, the streets exploded into a huge uproar. The uproar was so intense that the sky was overturned. The matter of today would surely become the greatest topic of discussion in Sword Sect City many years ago. That young man and the bird that flew out from his embrace would become the topic of discussion for countless people. But Su-yi didn't care about all this at all. It wasn't long before he and little handsome Su arrived at the city gate. After leaving the city, he had to rush back with all his might. Otherwise, once the 7-Star Sword School sect leader, Ran Jianxian, obtained the news, he would surely pursue them. It was only him and little handsome Su, and they would surely be unable to go against the 7-Star Sword School. After flashing out of the city gate, Su-yi once again saw the 12 figures that were hung at the 2 sides of the city gate. "Since I've seen you, I'll give you a chance to live. In the end, whether you live or die will depend on your own luck," Su-yi said softly. Naturally, he remembered that these 12 people had been brought back by Ran Yin and the 7-Star Sword School's disciples and hung above the city gate. Later, he heard from others that these people were from the Blue Moon mercenary group. Originally, he didn't want to interfere in these matters, but since he had already become enemies with the 7-Star Sword School, he might as well help these people along the way. However, Su-yi wouldn't help them too much. As long as he could save these people, as for what happened in the future, it would depend on their own luck. Chi. Rays of sharp sword chi shot out from Su-yi's hand, and the 12 figures fell to the ground one after another. The strength of these people was completely restrained, and some of them even had their tendons cut off. After being hung for such a long time, they were already dispirited. The restrictions on these 12 people weren't particularly advanced, and Su-yi easily removed them, allowing them to quickly recover a portion of their strength. "Brat, do you want to die?" At the city gate, the disciples guarding the 7-Star Sword School saw Su-yi's actions and were instantly filled with killing intent as they shouted coldly. They didn't know how strong Su-yi was. If they knew that their young sect master, protector, and sect master's mount had all died in his hands, these disciples wouldn't dare to shout at Su-yi no matter how bold they were. Su-yi snorted lightly and killed these people with a raise of his hand. "Thank you for saving us, benefactor." The 12 people who were saved immediately bowed to Su-yi. Everyone's eyes were filled with gratitude. "I just did it in passing. No need to thank me." Su-yi waved his hand and said. After saying that, he prepared to turn around and leave, not wanting to delay any longer. "Benefactor, please take us with you." Among the 12 people, the leader of the Azure Moon mercenary group, Nangong Ningyue, shouted at Su-yi. "We're not related to each other. so I can only help you this much. Whether you live or die, it's up to you. Sui glanced at Nangong Ningyue indifferently. Although this woman was in a sorry state at this time, it wasn't difficult to see her moving appearance. But what Sui paid attention to the most was the tenacity in the depths of her eyes. That kind of resolute state was rarely seen. If Benefactor doesn't help us, it will be difficult for us to escape the pursuit of the 7-star sword school with our current seriously injured bodies. Nangong Ningyu spoke. One could hear the gratitude in her words, but at the same time, she maintained a bit of her own perseverance. She said, Benefactor, help us to the end. Help us to the end. Take us away from here. Saving you is a whim of mine. I have no obligation to take you away. Sui frowned and didn't want to say anything more to Nangong Ningyue. As long as you take us away from here, I... Chapter 974. Nangong Ningyu bit her lip, and her heart was also tangled and struggling. Her meaning was already very obvious. To put it bluntly, she wanted to use her body to exchange for Su Yi's rescue. The remaining 11 people of the Blue Moon mercenary group all moved when they heard this. They wanted to say something, but they were interrupted by Nangong Ningyu. Nangong Ningyu just looked at Su Yi. She had extreme confidence that with her beauty, she could definitely tempt countless men. Previously, she was hung on the city wall by Ranyan. Her clothes were ragged, and the countless burning gazes coming and going below the city were all seen by her. Of course, she had also noticed this young man at that time. Probably only his eyes were pure and different. It was just that Nangong Ningyu felt that the other party should have no reason to refuse her. However, Su Yi's answer directly stunned her. Not interested. Su Yi faintly glanced at Nangong Ningyu and said so. This sentence made Nangong Ningyu extremely embarrassed. At this moment, her blood was dirty, but her beautiful face was still full of embarrassment. Obviously, she never thought that Su Yi would refuse so straightforwardly. After saying this, Su Yi turned around and walked away. He was not going to talk nonsense with this Nangong Ningyu. He was not made of stone. Of course, he had some indescribable psychology toward the opposite sex. It was just that sometimes when it came to his own principles, Su Yi could still grasp it very accurately. He would never do anything foolish under the temptation of beauty. What's more, although this Nangong Ningyu was beautiful, she could only be regarded as ordinary among the women he had seen. Once a person's standards were raised, they wouldn't be too interested in those ordinary things. The other 11 people around Nangong Ningyu also showed a bit of anger. If it weren't for Su Yi saving them just now, these people would probably rush up to find that kid to reason with. Benefactor, please wait. Looking at Su Yi walking further and further away without the slightest intention of looking back, Nangong Ningyu felt very helpless in her heart. Just as Su Yi had said, the life and death of the 12 of them had nothing to do with him. Saving them was already a favor, and he had no right to ask the other party to help him to the end. However, Nangong Ningyue clearly knew that the strength of the 7-star sword school wasn't ordinary. At this time, they were all seriously injured. No matter what, they couldn't escape too far. If Su Yi didn't help them, they would fall into the hands of the 7-star sword school sooner or later. At that time, he would still be unable to escape death. Therefore, all their hopes were placed on this young man. As long as Benefactor takes us away safely, I can tell you a piece of news about the treasure. Nangong Ningyue shouted at Su Yi's back. Hearing these words, Su Yi's footsteps suddenly stopped, and then he turned around and asked with raised eyebrows, "What treasure?" Seeing that Su Yi was finally interested, Nangong Ningyue's mouth inadvertently hung a smile of success. However, when she thought that she couldn't even compare to the news of a treasure, it made her heart bitter for no reason. This news is absolutely reliable, and the treasure in it is extremely extraordinary. It will certainly satisfy Benefactor. Nangong Ningyue's expression became serious, and she said, "You saved us, so you are our benefactor. But if I tell Benefactor this news, it is a kind of exchange. As long as you can safely leave this place, I will definitely tell Benefactor everything I know when the storm fades away." When Nangong Ningyue spoke, her eyes also emerged with seriousness. It didn't seem like she was faking it. Su-yi listened and fell into a short silence. He stared at the woman in front of him and didn't speak for a while. He just stared at her. "Benefactor, do you not believe me?" Under Su-yi's gaze, Nangong Ningyue only felt a trace of panic in her heart for no reason. She hurriedly added, "I, Nangong Ningyue, have always been upright and have never spoken false words. If Benefactor really doesn't believe me, then forget it." "Haha, of course I believe you." Just when Nangong Ningyue's heart was beating like a drum, Su-yi suddenly showed a brilliant smile. He looked at Nangong Ningyue as if he saw a relative. He ran back eagerly and said, "Let's not delay. Let's go." While speaking, Su-yi extended his hand to support Nangong Ningyue. His other hand supported a member of the Blue Moon mercenary group and dragged them away. Such a huge change really made everyone stunned. Their minds couldn't keep up with the rhythm. Many people were cursing in their hearts. This kid really changes his face faster than flipping a book. "Thank you, Benefactor." However, Nangong Ningyue didn't care so much. She hurriedly thanked him as if she was afraid that Su-yi would go back on his words. She turned her head and issued an order to her subordinates to take care of each other and follow behind Su. Among these people, some of the tendons in their hands and feet were cut. Therefore, after Su-yi undid the restriction on their bodies, they couldn't recover their ability to move. They had to use other means. Su-yi didn't always support Nangong Ningyue. Relatively speaking, her injuries were lighter and she could move on her own. In order to not waste too much time, Su-yi had no choice but to take two members of the Blue Moon mercenary group and move quickly. Even because there were too many injured people, little handsome Su was pulled out of his arms. He dragged the two injured people and flapped his wings to fly. In this way, everyone's speed was truly impressive. Su-yi didn't dare to delay too much. One had to know that the news in Sword Star City would definitely spread quickly. The 7-star sword school would definitely not let it go. If he wanted to go back, he had to pass through the barren mountains and dense forests outside the city. Who knew when the people from the 7-star sword school would catch up? In addition, Su-yi finally changed his mind and decided to bring these people from the Blue Moon mercenary group. It wasn't just because of the news of the treasure mentioned by Nangong Ningyue, but also because of another layer of consideration. He and little handsome Su had left the Golden Dragon space and traveled all the way, but in the end, they came to Sword Star City. It was precisely because he was completely unfamiliar with this mountain forest and got lost in it. At this time, with these people from the Blue Moon mercenary group, based on the other party's good reputation here, these people would definitely be very familiar with this mountain forest. If Su-yi wanted to smoothly pass through here, he definitely couldn't do without the guidance of Nangong Ningyue and the others. In this way, he could truly get rid of the pursuit of the 7-star sword school. Chapter 975. Walk out of this mountain forest and keep going east, then you will reach the Yin-Yang Abyss Flood Dragon's territory. As everyone moved forward, Nangong Ningyue spoke from time to time, pointing the way for Su-yi. She was indeed very familiar with this area and had some understanding of the various major forces that were entrenched in this area. As a Demon Emperor realm existence, the Yin-Yang Abyss Flood Dragon was naturally an existence that many rogue cultivators and mercenary groups absolutely had to stay away from. For those whose cultivation wasn't too strong, they could only take a detour. However, Nangong Ningyue didn't understand why this young man wanted to go to the Yin-Yang Abyss Flood Dragon's lair, but she didn't ask much. Su-yi also didn't tell her that the Yin-Yang Abyss Flood Dragon had been subdued by him. As the time they spent together grew longer and longer, Su-yi also had some recognition of this Nangong Ningyue. He had tried Pro before. When a powerful savage beast appeared, Su-yi didn't use his full strength and deliberately created an unrivaled posture. At the critical moment, he said that he could only take Nangong Ningyue with him. The remaining 11 people of the Blue Moon mercenary group could no longer be taken care of. However, Nangong Ningyue's attitude changed drastically in an instant. She vowed to live and die with her subordinates. No matter how Su Yi threatened and tempted, she was indifferent. This situation made Su Yi secretly nod his head. If Nangong Ningyue agreed and abandoned her brothers who had gone through life and death with her for her own life, Su Yi would never dare to trust her. In the end, Su Yi and Su Shuai brought the 12 people out of danger, making everyone breathe a sigh of relief. The situation doesn't seem to be good. While moving forward, Su Yi gradually frowned and said softly. He found that the savage beasts in the surrounding mountain forest were somewhat abnormal, which made him vigilant. Nangong Ningyue naturally discovered this situation. She said, "There should be a powerhouse around, which frightened these savage beasts. That's why they are so abnormal." Hearing such words, Su Yi nodded slightly to express his agreement. Such a powerhouse was either a powerful demon beast or a powerhouse among humans. No matter what the situation was, Su Yi felt that something was wrong. "We must speed up," Su Yi said with deep words. Everyone quickly advanced, but as time passed, it really made people feel like they were fleeing in panic. Behind them, it was as if there was a powerful existence chasing after them. Su Yi calculated the time. The news of Ran and the others' deaths in Sword Star City must have reached the ears of the Seven-Star School's sect master, Ran Jinxian. Those people must have started to take action now. They might have already found some traces of him and chased after him. Thinking of this, they did not dare to delay any longer. All of them increased their speed to the maximum. Even handsome Su had a serious look on his face. His seemingly weak bird claws were grabbing a figure each, and he was flying at a high speed. Su Yi took the lead and led everyone through the mountain forest. Relying on the special ability of the Origin Supreme technique, they avoided the territory of the powerful savage beast time and time again. He just wanted to go back as soon as possible. This mountain forest was no longer peaceful. Of course, a large part of it was also due to him. "Boss, I feel the aura of the Green Emperor and the others." Suddenly, handsome Su opened his mouth and said to Su Yi in excitement, "I feel it too. Let's go in that direction." Su Yi was overjoyed and said happily, "Unspecified currency most new chapter, section GBK, above F sharp." He and handsome Su could feel that the aura of the Green Emperor and the Yin Yang Underworld Emperor were very close. For them, this was simply overjoyed. With the arrival of these two experts, he, Su Yi, would be able to do whatever he wanted in this place. Among all the big forces, including those powerful beast emperors, there should be very few who could deal with two Demon Royal Realm experts. Sure enough, not long after, Su Yi finally saw the figures of the Green Emperor and the Yin Yang Underworld Emperor, as well as the wolf-headed demonic bat. "Master!" The Green Emperor and the Yin Yang Underworld Emperor came to Su Yi and saluted respectfully. "You've come at the right time." Su Yi nodded and replied with a smile. "They are two beast emperors." Seeing the three figures, Nangong Ningyue's whole body was a little tense. Her mouth was open and her eyes were wide open. She looked completely shocked. It was not difficult for her to perceive that the Green Emperor and the Yin Yang Underworld Emperor were in the form of demonic beasts. Under the horrible aura, it was like a bottomless abyss, which made people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Demonic beasts that could transform into human form must be in the Demon Royal Realm. But what did these two Demon Royal Realm experts call this young man just now? "Master?" Nangong Ningyue picked her ears, wondering if she had heard wrongly. Previously, when the little bird spoke, it had already surprised her. At this time, it was simply an extreme shock. "Master, if there is nothing else, let's go back now." The Green Emperor stepped forward and glanced at the people of the Blue Moon mercenary group. He didn't ask anything and just said this. He could see that Su Yi and the others should have experienced something, so they must be going back. However, Su Yi suddenly smiled and waved his hand. "There's no hurry now." Immediately, he looked around and found a good place. He called out to little handsome Su, "Little handsome, go make a fire. Let's taste the meat of the Ayuka heaven-splitting tiger. After saying that, Su-e rushed to the side of the stream, took out the corpse of the Ayuka heaven-splitting tiger from the space bag, and began to dissect and clean it. All right. Seeing Su-yi's actions, little handsome Su's saliva flowed out with a hua sound. With a cheer, he flapped his wings and flew to find firewood to start a fire. This kind of action caused Nangong Ningyue and the others to be stunned. They were all dumbfounded. They couldn't figure it out. Now that two Beast Emperor Realm experts had arrived, this young man wasn't in a hurry to find a safe place. Instead, what was he doing here? Roast meat? Stew soup? Looking at how familiar they were with the road, they were clearly veterans. Let's wait here and eat while we wait. Let's see who is so unlucky to be the first to fall into the pit. Su-e happily roasted the meat, and a large pot beside him also stewed the meat soup. He threw in a handful of seasonings, accompanied by a mellow fragrance, causing one's appetite to rise. Since the Green Emperor and the Yin-Yang Underworld Emperor had rushed over, Su-e was not afraid at all. He wanted to wait here. No matter who came to find him, he had the confidence to take care of them. The Seven-Star Sword School, the Gimdeo sect, and the Green Sanctuary sect had already formed a grudge with each other, so killing one would be one less. Chapter 976. Su-e was no longer in a hurry. He calmly roasted the meat and stewed the soup. Su Xiaoshui helped from his side. The two of them were so busy that they were in full swing. Everyone stared at them, including the Yin-Yang Underworld Emperor. He had only followed Su-e for a short period of time and had yet to taste his master's cooking. The Green Emperor swallowed his saliva and felt a chill down his spine. He had also been cut by Su-e before. It's almost done, it's almost done. Su Xiaoshui shouted, jumping up and down in excitement. The thick fragrance of meat wafted in the air, causing Nangong Ningyue and the other 11 members of the Blue Moon Mercenary Group to twitch their noses and secretly swallow their saliva. Come, let's all have a taste. After the meat was completely roasted, he gave everyone present a share, including the Green Emperor, Yin-Yang Underworld Emperor, Wolf Bat, Nangong Ningyue, and the others. You guys are injured, so eating some of this barbaric beast meat will be of great benefit. Su-e looked at Nangong Ningyue and the others and said to them. At first, the 12 members of the Blue Moon Mercenary Group were a little embarrassed, but they couldn't resist the tempting meat fragrance and joined in. A group of more than 10 people ate heartily, eating until their fingers were dripping with oil. Delicious, a member of the Blue Moon Mercenary Group said, while eating, nodding his head. I saw this tiger's body just now. It seemed a little familiar. While eating the meat, another member of the mercenary group said, it seems to be the Ayuka heaven-splitting tiger, the same as the mount of the Seven-Star Sword School's sect master, Ran Jianxian. Someone next to him said, there were some conflicts between the Blue Moon Mercenary Group and the Seven-Star Sword School. Naturally, they had some understanding of Ran Jianxuan's mount and knew that it was an Ayuka heaven-splitting tiger. And the big tiger corpse that Su-e took out just now looked very similar to the Ayuka heaven-splitting tiger, which made them feel familiar. Hearing their words, Su-e lightly smiled but didn't say anything. On the other hand, little handsome Su didn't even raise his head. After taking a big bite of the tender barbecued meat, he mumbled as he chewed, that's right, it's the sky-splitting tiger you guys were talking about. When the 12 members of the Blue Moon Mercenary Group heard this, they immediately stopped eating and looked at each other. You're saying that what we're eating now is Ran Jianxuan's mount? After a while, someone asked suspiciously, glaring at handsome Su in disbelief. Everyone turned to look at handsome Su, who was working hard, waiting for his answer. That's right. Handsome Su answered without hesitation. Everyone in the Blue Moon Mercenary Group was shocked when they heard his words. That was Ran Jianxuan's mount, a formidable third-level demon, void stage, savage demon beast. At this moment, it was actually being roasted and stewed in a soup by this youth and a bird. If the members of the Seven-Star Sword School were to find out about this, how furious would they be? And it was precisely because of this that the gazes these members of the Blue Moon mercenary group looked at Su-yi and Handsome Su had changed even more. A bird that was able to speak was probably at the demon void stage, without a doubt. However, the youth's depth was still impossible for them to see through. But since he was able to make 2 demon monarchs follow him, he was surely not simple. Beside everyone, Nangong Ningyue glanced deeply at Su-yi, and her eyes flickered with an indescribable brilliance. A strange color flowed within her eyes, and it was unknown what she was thinking about. Under Su-yi's lead, everyone ate the barbecued meat as they withdrew over 10 large bowls, and everyone filled a bowl of fragrant meat soup. The energy within this meat is so pure, I want to refine it. After the members of the Blue Moon mercenary group finished eating, they felt a vigorous energy flowing within their bodies, and they couldn't help but want to properly regulate their breathing. The flesh of the heaven-splitting tiger of the demon illusionary realm could bring them great benefits. They all knew that after regulating their breathing and absorbing the energy, the injuries on their bodies would be mostly healed. Everyone, go and regulate your breathing. We'll continue our journey later. Green Emperor, Yin Yang Underworld Emperor, you guys protect us. Su-yi spoke out and said to everyone. He really wasn't in a hurry to go back now. Instead, he was looking forward to which faction would come knocking on his door. But now that they had finished eating the meat, there was still no one coming. Thus, they might as well let everyone rest here for a while and wait for a while. This woman isn't a simple person. After Su-yi regulated his breathing for a while, he opened his eyes and looked at Nangong Ningyue, who was sitting cross-legged opposite him, as he thought in his heart. This person, as a woman, was able to bring the Blue Moon mercenary group to an extraordinary level, and her reputation was very good. Her methods must be extraordinary. In addition, after this short period of interaction, Su-yi also felt that he couldn't see through her. The other party's shrewdness was also very deep and difficult to fathom. After this deal is over, I'll send them away as soon as possible. Su-yi thought to himself. He didn't want to keep an extremely shrewd person by his side. This wasn't his character. However, Su-yi had already promised Nangong Ningyue that he would bring them to a safe place. At that time, they would be able to obtain information about the treasure, which could be considered an equal exchange. Huff! As everyone breathed in and out, time passed quickly. Unknowingly, the sky gradually darkened, and then the morning light shone out again. It was as if a night had passed in a hurry. Sai-Sui sighed. He had waited for an entire night, but he didn't even get a single feather, which made him feel very melancholic. Ran Jianxian, the Green Sanctuary sect, the spirit-devouring emperor. None of the people that Su-yi wanted to see came. Let's go back first. We'll settle some accounts another day. Su-yi didn't plan to wait any longer. It was better to go back first. Immediately, the group set off again. This time, among the 12 people of the Blue Moon mercenary group, 8 of them had almost recovered. The remaining 4 had their tendons cut off and were still unable to move. But in this way, everyone moved much faster. Su-yi and Su-shui didn't need to help anymore. The journey was very smooth. Su-yi and the others didn't spend too much time and returned to the small mountain gate that the Yin-Yang Hell Flood Dragon originally occupied. At this time, Merciless West had also returned. Big Brother, have you found everything? Big Brother Merciless West was looking for the ingredients to refine the Extreme Emperor Heavenly Soul Pill. Su-yi also attached great importance to this matter and hoped that his big brother could succeed. Of course, Merciless West chuckled, looked at Su-yi and said, "Now that everything is ready, I will immediately refine it after everything is settled." Great! Su-yi was also happy and couldn't help but say so. They are? When seeing Nangong Ningyue and the other 11 members of the Blue Moon mercenary group, Merciless West couldn't help but ask. I was just about to tell Big Brother about this matter. Let's go to the main hall to discuss it. Chapter 977. Soon, a group of people were seated in the main hall. Su-yi had already introduced Nangong Ningyue and the other 12 members of the Blue Moon mercenary group. He already had an understanding of them when they were traveling together before. In addition to Nangong Ningyu, the leader, the remaining 11 people were all sworn brothers. It was said that they had no parents since they were young. Eventually, they met Nangong Ningyu and joined the Blue Moon mercenary group, becoming her most capable assistant. These 11 people's names were especially easy to remember. Su-yi remembered them all at once. According to their ages, they were called Yuan 1, Yuan 2, Yuan 3, all the way up to Yuan 11. News of the treasure? After hearing Su-yi's introduction, Merciless West raised his eyebrows and looked at Nangong Ningyu and asked, "What kind of treasure?" On the latest chapter, Section D. His eyes were motionless, as sharp as an eagle's eyes, making Nangong Ningyu's hair stand on end. His eyes seemed to be saying that if Nangong Ningyu dared to deceive Su-yi, her end would definitely be miserable. Trying hard to suppress the fear in her heart, Nangong Ningyu raised her eyes and looked straight at Merciless West and said, "It's a Vitality Stone Mine. The news is absolutely reliable." Vitality Stone Mine. Hearing what Nangong Ningyu said, Merciless West, Green Emperor, Inyang Underworld Emperor, Su-yi, and others were all stunned. A Vitality Stone Mine was not an ordinary thing. It was an absolutely rare existence. Generally, whenever it appeared, it would be controlled by those powerful forces. If he had a rich collection, then he would definitely make a fortune. When Su-yi was in the Barbarian Demon Forest, he was caught by the people of the Black Fiend sect and worked in a mine for a while, so he knew the huge benefits. How many people know this news? Su-yi raised his eyebrows and asked Nangong Ningyu. He was a little excited in his heart. If there was a Vitality Stone Mine, as Nangong Ningyu said, then he would make a fortune. He had been worrying about the huge debt he owed to the Lingbao Hall. Was he going to make a fortune right now? Of course, Su-yi wasn't blinded by this news. He knew that if too many people knew about such a piece of news, its value would be greatly reduced. With such great benefits, it would be best if he could get his hands on all of them. I discovered this mine by accident. No one else should know about it yet. Even if there are, they should only be a handful. Nangong Ningyu thought for a while and said solemnly. After her explanation, everyone finally understood that Nangong Ningyu's ancestors had some special methods. They could detect the location of mineral deposits according to the terrain and so on. Su-yi knew that this was probably the geomancy method from his previous life. Your Nangong family actually has this kind of ability. Merciless West nodded. She already believed most of Nangong Ningyu. Big brother, why don't we check it out as soon as possible? It's better to be careful with this kind of benefit. We can't let it fall into the hands of others. Su-yi rubbed his palms and said with a smile. His eyes were almost emitting a green light. A primordial stone mine, this was simply a great benefit. After learning this news from Nangong Ningyu, Su-yi immediately set a small goal that could be achieved. That was to first dig out 1 billion vitality stones and return it to the Lingbao Hall. He couldn't wait to let Nangong Ningyu lead the way and dig out the treasure now. However, Merciless West thought for a while and shook her head. She said to Su-yi, "This matter isn't urgent for the time being. Since no one knows about this mine, then we aren't in a hurry." As she spoke, she turned her head to look at Su-yi and continued. "In about 2 months, the Alliance Conference of the Chaos region will begin. At that time, all the first and second-rate forces' younger generation will participate. It's a rare event. You little brat should also participate. If you can obtain the final victory, you will obtain great benefits. You can't miss such a grand event." Alliance Conference? Su-yi secretly thought. He had heard of this Alliance Conference many times. The people of the third-rate forces in the mountain forest brought their younger generation disciples to gain experience. Wasn't it to prepare for this Alliance Conference? If there wasn't news of the mineral deposit, Su-yi definitely wouldn't hesitate and would also take a trip to the flood. But now his heart was filled with vitality stones. He was afraid that the treasure would grow wings and run away, or that someone would beat him to it. How could he still care about the Alliance Conference? As if seeing through Su-yi's thoughts, Merciless West glared at him and said unhappily, let's put aside the matter of the treasure for the time being. Our Bawang sect's current strength isn't strong enough. Even if we obtain it, it will be difficult to defend it. You must know that there are still many powerful first and second-rate forces in the Chaos region. Sui couldn't help but nod his head. Now that they were all together, their strength was indeed not bad, but they were definitely not strong. Once those first and second-rate forces obtained the news of the treasure, with the current strength of the Bawang sect, it was indeed impossible to defend it. On this point, what Merciless West said was still very reasonable. Sui expressed his agreement. Let's prepare again during this period of time. You go to participate in the Alliance Conference, and I will refine the Extreme Emperor Heavenly Soul Pill. At that time, our strength will increase by another level, and the chances of excavating the treasure will also be greater. Merciless West spoke again and said so. Big Brother is still considerate. Sui smiled and said to Merciless West. It wasn't that he didn't understand these principles, but his style of doing things was like this. Sometimes, he had no taboos and acted decisively. When the time came, he would block soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. Kid, don't flatter me. No one is as smart as you. Merciless West rolled her eyes and scolded with a smile. Well, this time our exchange is considered complete. Sui smiled at Merciless West, then turned to look at Nangong Ningyue and said, My promise has also been fulfilled. I have brought you to a safe place. You can rest assured and heal your injuries here. When you are healed, you can leave. At that time, there will be no connection between us. Bringing back Nangong Ningyue and the other 12 people and saving their lives, Sui learned the news of the Vitality Stone Mine from Nangong Ningyue. This transaction had been completed. Both sides took what they needed, and no one owed the other anything. As for letting them stay here to heal their injuries, Sui was also very relieved. With the Green Emperor, Yin Yang Underworld Emperor, and his big brother Merciless West, these 3 Emperor-level powerhouses, the 12 people of the Blue Moon mercenary group absolutely couldn't cause any trouble unless they were tired of living. Benefactor, Nangong Ningyue, has a presumptuous request. After hearing Sui's words, Nangong Ningyue suddenly said, What? Sui raised his eyebrows and asked, You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.